Chapter 1470. The end of the war left the realm of the gods riddled with holes. The dilapidated walls looked as if the realm of the gods had fallen and been trampled several times. However, those scars were formed during the last period of the war. There was still a lot of chaotic energy left on those scars, all of which were fusing with the origin energy that was slowly dissipating. The power of distortion and the dark energy used by Yun Nuashing did not leave any trace on the realm of the gods. Those were all disintegrated by the origin energy bit by bit, and it was so clean that it was as if they had never existed. After the emergency state was lifted, the city's great defensive formation did not detect any threat and gradually returned to the void. The panic of the catastrophe seemed to have disappeared along with the disappearance of the great formation. Everyone was once again in a state of carelessness, repairing the city walls and some buildings that were damaged by the energy shock waves and talking about the war that had just passed. The gods and some lesser gods were helping to repair the land that was riddled with holes. The origin energy would not stop them from repairing the land, but it was a little difficult to repair it. The potholes looked like a beehive, and every pit and crack was an abyss that was more than 10,000 miles deep. Who could live comfortably in such a place? What if some little brats ran around and fell into it? There were also some who had nothing better to do than to jump into the pits. Overall, everything was in order. Although the war caused a great commotion, it did not cause too much damage to the realm of the gods. It was now a period of peace and recovery after the war. Although it was such a scene, no one had the feeling that the war was over. On the contrary, there was an inexplicable sense of depression in their hearts. They did not know what exactly happened, but they clearly saw the course of the war. In the beginning, it was a battle between the guardians of the realm of the gods. Suddenly, there was only one person left to guard the realm of the gods. The others seemed to have encountered something more important than the battle in the realm of the gods, and had not returned until now. Although the number of those people was pitifully small compared to the number of lives in the realm of the gods, they were huge. Now that all of them had left, only a group of scattered people were wandering around the realm of the gods to inspect the situation. They always felt empty and uneasy. Oh yes, there was still that lord. They did not know how that lord was after the war. I heard that it was another lord who was as famous as Lord Hui. You mean Lord Observer? That's right, with such a big thing happening in the deity realm. How could that lord not come out? Something major had happened in the depths of the void. Lord Hui had taken away most of the forces of the divine realm and the world of order. It was because of this that Lord Hui had left with his men. Right? According to reliable sources, it was Lord Observer who chased them away while he stayed behind to guard the divine realm. Where did you hear that from? Don't spout nonsense. This is insider information. I heard that Jing revered God was annoyed by the disturbance, so he revealed a little about the Observer. Really reliable news. In another timeline, in the 139th era of the Pantheon, a group of people who had traveled through time and space were also paying attention to this matter. However, after the battle ended, they could not see much of the scene. The consciousness of the barrier guessed that it was because the main body had exhausted too much energy and did not have much energy left, so they simply stopped watching. After a while, Nightmare came back to her senses and rubbed her eyes. I'm going blind. Everyone nodded. This was the most intuitive feeling they had after watching the epic battle. The sky was filled with dazzling energy colors, and even after so many years, they were still blinded by the light. In the end, they did not know what left the deepest impression on them. That race, I seem to have some impression of it. Temple Master Jean scratched his head and turned around to search for some information carriers in his storage space. As he searched, he said, I think it's in some world in the void. I've only seen it once, but the previous Temple Master and the others seem to have seen it several times. Didn't they all die in the divine realm? With the scale of the battle, how could that race still survive? Yuanshi had his arms crossed, but when he heard this news, he was so shocked that his hands almost fell off. I'm not sure about this, but Little Star might know something. Temple Master Jean turned his gaze to the consciousness of the barrier. The latter glanced at them and spoke softly. Silver light flashed in the eyes of the consciousness of the barrier. After a while, it answered, there is another branch of the distorted race that had contact with the main body. Because they chose to coexist with order and did not participate in the battle. They survived. More information is unknown. Everyone nodded. So that's how it is. Temple Master Gene was still searching for information carriers in his storage space. After a while, he reacted. He took out an energy ball and looked inside. Well, now they call themselves the Divine Shadow Race. It is said that they have a good relationship with the Divine Realm. However, the Divine Realm has lost track of them in this era, so there's no way to contact them. The main branch seems to be is surname Shun. Yes, that's it. However, they themselves do not know who their ancestor is. Feng listened and suddenly said, Divine Shadow refers to the shadow of the Divine Realm. If my understanding is correct, that should be the case. Temple Master Gene nodded and put away the energy ball. It is said that in history, there were some cities located next to the Divine Realm that were also called Divine Shadow City. The general meaning should be the same. Divine Shadow City exists because it is next to the Divine Realm. The Divine Shadow Race. Well, that should be related to Little Star. Based on what we know so far, that should be the case. That race used to be a non-order life form. It wasn't until the Age of Old that their entire race changed. Even though the energy of the main bloodline still carried an aura of non-order, the order nature of their entire race was already on the side of order. They had probably gone through a lot in between. Everyone replied with an "oh" and understood some ancient matters. Zai looked at everyone and then lowered his head to look at little purple soul, who was uneasy. He pinched her cheeks and said, now that we are done talking, let's talk about this girl. Everyone turned around and saw little purple soul trying her best to shrink her head and pretend that she did not exist. She looked guilty and wronged, which made them feel a little embarrassed. However, they were very curious. The blue-haired girl said little purple soul, and then said something that they had never heard before. They remembered that was called Sacred Soul, Purple Fairy Crystal. If they said that it had nothing to do with this girl, they would eat Yin Nuashing alive. But how to say it? That was a problem. Xian and Feng looked at each other for a while. Feng stared at the pair of dark purple eyes and understood what she meant. She nodded and walked forward. She squatted in front of little purple soul and pressed her little head with her hand. Little purple soul, how much do you remember? Little purple soul shrank her head and muttered, I don't remember anything. Everyone was stunned. The little girl continued, do you believe me if I tell you this? Everyone shook their heads firmly. The little girl did not know whether to laugh or cry. She hesitated for a while and then jumped down from the stone platform. She then ran to Yin Nuashing under the Tree of Souls and looked at her. She looked a little confused. I don't remember anything about Big Brother. I also forgot some things about the Dark Age. I only remember some vague things. I remember that someone released me and took care of me. But I didn't know who it was until I saw Big Brother again. You remembered it? Xian could not help but ask. Little purple soul shook her head. It was a long time before I met Big Brother until I went to the EC. During that time, I forgot everything. Even when I suddenly woke up, I couldn't be sure what I had forgotten and what I remembered. The first few eras were also in a daze. I didn't know where I went. I only remembered that I was looking for it, but I didn't know where it went. Little purple soul suddenly giggled. So, when I saw Big Brother again, I suddenly recognized him. But I couldn't remember him at all. Now, I can be sure that Big Brother is the person I've been looking for. So, you really are that ball, the Golden Princess said in a low voice. At the mention of this, the little purple soul instantly became shy and embarrassed. She blushed and nodded her head. That was my initial appearance. Zai nodded in understanding and let go of little purple soul. He continued to scrutinize Ming, the little angel. She was stunned. Everyone suddenly felt that the atmosphere in front of them was not right. It was as if they had entered a courtroom. Zai reached out and grabbed a handful of Ming's feathers. She screamed in shock and quickly stepped back. Then, what's up with you, little angel? But I don't remember anything at all. Ming's beautiful face was covered in sweat. Everyone suddenly remembered that there was another person with an unknown identity. This person who had turned into a little angel halfway through their journey had not been identified since the beginning. Until now, they still had not confirmed her identity. When Yin Nuashing returned last time, he took a few more glances at this girl, but he did not say anything. The person I met was not Ming. It was another life form. Due to some reason, it possessed the memories of the time before I went back in time. The voice of the barrier's consciousness from the side made everyone turn around. Ming quickly heaved a sigh of relief. Zai's scrutinizing gaze was too scary. So, we still can't be sure of the little angel's identity. Zai heard her and sighed. She tugged at Ming's silver-white hair. What did little purple soul remember? Don't you have any recollection of it? Ming turned her gaze away and shook her head lightly. However, this answer was obviously not convincing. She was once again stared at by the focused gazes and sweated. She quickly changed the topic. Sister Zai, why do you care so much about my background? Because I care a lot. Zai sat on the stone platform and looked at Yun Nuashing, who was under the soul tree. Her gaze was complicated. This little idiot has lost himself. He kept searching and going back in time until he reached the Dark Age. When he came back that day, I asked him if he knew who he was, but he still said, I don't know who I am. Suddenly, I felt sad and tired. Then, when I saw that none of you knew who you were, I unknowingly became very concerned. Ming was stunned for a moment. His eyelids drooped slightly. Just as he was feeling a little touched, Ziya's light purple eyes glanced over again. But I don't know if you guys are clear about it. Perhaps I'm just worrying for nothing. Ming laughed dryly. Her jade-like hands tugged at the hem of her dress. She shut her mouth and looked to the side guiltily. It was obvious that she was hiding something, which made everyone very curious. However, since she did not want to say anything, then they would not say anything. Anyway, they would know when the time was right. Little Purple Soul had been waiting for this opportunity to finally reveal his identity. Princess Jean glanced at the crowd, waved her hand, and excused herself. All right, I'll leave after seeing all this. There's still something I need to do now. Suddenly, she focused her gaze and looked sternly at Palace Master Jean and the others. The few of you, can you not come out and wander around before you reach the divine level? Do you know that time is of the essence? If I didn't need more time, I would have gone up already. Little Star has created a perfect environment for you. You still have the mood to wander around? Hey, don't run. Don't run if you dare to slack off. I'm not done yet. Little Star's 888 creeds. Listen to me, I'll tell you all one by one. When the palace masters heard the Golden Empress' fierce words, their faces immediately broke out in cold sweat. Under the nagging attack, they instantly broke through their defenses. Their faces turned pale, and within a few seconds, they fled as fast as they could, disappearing without a trace. Ziyin and the others were quite calm. Over the past few days, this kind of drama had happened more than once or twice. In addition, they suddenly felt that this sentence also meant to tell them not to be lazy. After all, it wasn't just the Hall Master and Big Brother and Big Sister who were wandering around. They thought about the current situation and looked at Yun Nuashing's peaceful sleeping posture. They thought about his burden and the burden he carried. They fell silent for a while and went to find a place to train. They had to work harder. Late in the 51st era, on a secluded mountain, beside the lake where the waterfall hit, a small grave was suddenly erected under a tree. 2 words were clearly written on it. Long Sky. There was no prefix or any superfluous words. There was only a name hanging there. But who could completely understand the weight of it? A bright white figure stood in front of the small grave. His eyes were closed. His long hair fluttered in the wind. It brushed past his face and eyes. It was itchy, but he ignored it. Lord Feng, why are you up? On the mountain, next to the small palace, a light blue figure hurriedly ran out of the transparent palace and came to the side of the bright white figure. He put his light blue windbreaker on the white figure and raised a spatial barrier to block the wind and the splashes of the water. Your body hasn't fully recovered yet. It's okay. It's almost done. There's no way to return to a perfect state in a short time. But for now, it's enough. Yin Nuashing tilted his head and looked at Jing Yuanji. He smiled and nodded. Jing Yuanji hesitated. She could only nod and say nothing else. She noticed the grave in front of her and the name. She was a little confused. Why did you build a grave for that person? To leave an impression, to leave a memento. Yin Nuashing let out a long sigh of relief. This is a failed race. They lost their lives under the general trend of the primordial realm, a race that lost their meaning. Their race's lives are still continuing in another world, but to me, the meaning is different. I don't resent them. They invaded the divine realm, started the greatest civil war in the world of order, disintegrated the void battlefront, and let the empty void battlefront be destroyed by the abyssal death mist. From the perspective of order, what they did was unforgivable and unforgivable. But I've always had a doubtful attitude towards the void battlefront and the void battlefront, so I don't feel much about what happened later. That was something that was bound to happen eventually. No matter how much we prepare, we will always be in a state of unpreparedness. It doesn't matter if the war happened earlier or later. They simply sacrificed everything for the path of survival they chose, gambled everything, and used everything they had. In the end, they were buried in the divine realm, and the splashes that splashed up instantly returned to the sea. Everything vanished like smoke, as if nothing had happened. Nothing happened. So from my personal perspective, I don't resent them. At most, I feel some anger, annoyance, and annoyance. At the same time, I also feel a little fortunate. Although they came for the realm of the gods, they did not really have the intention to destroy this world. They had many opportunities to go behind my back to capture you all, to wreak havoc everywhere, to distract me. Whether they succeeded or not, they did not do it. In the end, they only came to defeat the power of the realm of the gods. This makes me feel fortunate, and also one of the reasons why I don't resent them. Jing Yuanji listened quietly and nodded from time to time. I don't really understand. But since it's your idea, there should be a deeper meaning that I don't understand. You don't have to look at it from my perspective. This is just my wayward way of doing things. Yin Nuashing stroked her long hair by her ear and laughed silently. The ones who fell here are failures, a failed race, a race, a race. They gave everything they had for their plan, for their long-cherished wish, for the path they pursued. In the end, they died silently in exchange for a silent ending. With time, they were forgotten by this world, and their names were erased from the void. I only hope that we won't have to face this day. Success is certainly delightful and exciting, but the failures who fell on the road, other than regret, I feel that they are also worthy of respect. Perhaps dozens of failures have fallen in front of the winners, or perhaps they started their journey earlier than the winners, or perhaps Yin Nuashing sighed silently. Perhaps it was because he saw himself failing time and time again, starting over and over again, again and again. He was the same kind of person as him. This sentence seemed to be able to be verified in some ways. Jing Yuanji tilted her head. Then, what's the other reason? Yin Nuashing tilted her eyes and looked up. The first person to step into the primeval realm after the void turmoil. Sigh, it's really enviable. Just think of it as a heartbroken person who wants to look up at the path that is impossible to tread. Hee hee. Let's not talk about this. The atmosphere suddenly became gloomy. Yin Nuashing changed the topic. How are the people lying in the spiritual temple? A total of 2,166 people. More than 3,000 people from other worlds of order were temporarily captured. In total, it will take another 5 days to completely reconstruct them. Jing Yuanji said seriously. What a heavy price to pay. More than 5,000 people, including the forces from other worlds of order that could not be saved. There are 6,000 to 7,000 people, or even more. If not for the spiritual temple, these people would have really entered the path of reincarnation, and the forces of the worlds of order would be weakened. Yin Nuashing sighed faintly. What's the situation at the front lines of the void? Lord Hui and 60% of the forces of the worlds of order are holding up the situation at the front lines. Our strategy of persuasion has pulled a lot of people to this line of defense. As long as the underworld does not send out any primeval heavenly gods, we will be able to hold on for a long time. The only regret is that there are still so many forces that are not willing to help. They're only stubbornly guarding their own worlds. Originally, there were some people who agreed to go to the front lines, but did not do so. They have sealed the world barrier and did not intend to contact the outside world. Now, we have no time to pay attention to them. Yin Nuashing nodded and laughed. See, what did I say? Those who agree in a hurry will not necessarily fight. Those who do not say a word will not necessarily withdraw. We will know the situation on the day of the war. However, the day has finally come. After this long war, we may not be able to return to the realm of the gods for a long time. Jing Yuanji was silent for a moment. Then she said, "How long do you think this war will last?" "At least 100 million years. At most 1 or 2 eras. The underworld will not stop fighting until the end of the worlds of order. They are much more powerful than the distorted race." "So long." Yun Nuashing tilted her head. "This is just a preliminary estimate. The underworld's purpose is not to destroy the worlds of order. Otherwise, they would only need to send out the primeval heavenly gods to wipe out all the forces of the worlds of order. They have other plans. So the war will last for a very long time." Taking one last look at the grave in front of her, Yunoshing tightened her light blue windbreaker and turned around. "Let's go. When everyone is resurrected, we should go to the front lines of the void. We will also bury ourselves in the grave one day. I just hope that this time can be dragged out a little longer. Whether it's for ourselves, for the order, or just for some self-satisfaction, is not a big problem. We just need a little more time. We still have a lot of things to do." Jing Yuanji followed behind her in a daze. "We will also have that day." Chapter 1471. In the space where the god's realm was located, in the first layer of the many spaces, everything was gilded gold. It was as if they had plunged into a dye vat. Above, below, left, and right were all gilded gold. Other than this, they could not see anything else. Yin Nuashing took out a large object wrapped in gray-white fog and held it in the palm of his hand. After floating around for a while, he found a good place and threw the object out. The object streaked across the gilded space and suddenly stopped moving. In the next moment, its volume suddenly increased by hundreds of thousands of times. Moreover, it appeared suddenly, without any process at all. Just now, there was only gilded gold in front of them, but now they saw a large piece of land crashing in front of them with a loud bang. The land, shrouded in gray-white clouds, gradually merged into this space. This gilded space was also gradually dyed with other colors. It was no longer just gilded gold that could be seen. The gorgeous colors began to change and slowly form some common things. A starry sky, a real and complete starry sky. The scenery of the deep space was formed in the distant places, and the sun and moon were formed near the land. Everything was no different from the real space outside. Is this the scene of the creation of heaven and earth? It doesn't feel spectacular at all. A voice suddenly rang out in Yun Nuashing's mind. Yun Nuashing tilted his head, and a platinum light suddenly flickered. 2 figures floated out of his body. Dao Heaven had dragged Yao Guang out of his soul. He had just gone to the graveyard of gods and devils and called Yao Guang out to make arrangements for them. This isn't the creation of heaven and earth. It's just the creation of a space. Yun Nuashing shook his head and waved his hand to gesture at the space in front of them. This is one of the many layers of space in the God realm. We and I manage it directly, so no one else will be able to reach this place. I have slightly shaped the appearance of this world, but that's only the starry sky outside. It might not be too big for you. Oh, there's no need. I only did it because of my personal preference. After all, there's no starry sky in the graveyard of gods and devils. Yao Guang looked at the boundless star field that extended out in his eyes, constantly forming huge stars, lighting up the starry sky. His eyes couldn't help but reveal a mesmerized expression as he murmured, "How beautiful." Yun Nuashing instantly revealed a happy smile and subconsciously reached out to pat Yao Guang's head. She then realized that this was not her girl and quickly withdrew her hand. She coughed softly and said, "Ahem, this is just a space created by the first layer. Although it is real, there are still some differences compared to the real, boundless world outside. There are some differences in the boundaries and regions. Now that the world of order is in chaos, we might have to leave for a long time. Even if we can't come back, it's normal. At least before we leave, we have to settle your affairs. Yin Nuoxing pointed at the land in front of them. This space is very vast, and I've set a time limit. Before that time limit is up, you won't be able to go to the realm of the gods. Or, if a powerful life form is born in this world, it can leave and go to the realm of the gods on its own. We can't go to that world? Yao Guang asked in confusion. Yin Nuoxing shook his head and said, "No, you can go, but there are some reasons why we cannot allow you to set foot there. A portion of the beings in the celestial realm have left, and those who belong to the top have left. Perhaps there will be more who will leave. Even so, those who remain in the celestial realm are still very dangerous to you. This is because you still need to develop, because you still need to fight for the future. As long as the world itself is still moving forward, this world will be dangerous. Therefore, before you have enough power to protect yourselves, I do not recommend you to go to that world. The time limit is also to limit you, but this threshold will not be too high. After the upheaval of the world is over, you should be able to recover quickly and adapt to the current rules." Yao Guang raised his head and pondered for a moment. When the world changed, it did give everyone a fright. However, since we were prepared, it didn't cause too much panic. It only took a few days for everything to settle down. The land became wider, and everyone noticed that the world had changed. Now, it's slowly returning to its original state. She frowned. There were some things that she wanted to say, but she didn't know what to say. She looked up and met Yin Nuoxing's gaze. Seeing him nodding, she felt relieved. Also, after those monsters disappeared, I thought that the world would return to peace. But with the change of the world, the situation over there is a little strange. From a perspective of the world of order, it's a civil war. To put it bluntly, it's domestic violence. The things that threaten life have disappeared, but peace did not come because of it. Instead, it fell into another kind of chaos. Various forces fought each other for various reasons, right? Yin Nuoxing said in a tone that she had expected. Yao Guang nodded awkwardly. That's normal. As long as the world wants to move forward, battles and changes are inevitable. You all have just fallen from the threat of destruction to another level of threat. This situation may last for thousands of years. During that time, many interesting things will happen. Yin Nuoxing shrugged when he saw the worried look on Yao Guang's face. He subconsciously reached out to pat her shoulder, but for some reason, he placed his hand on her head and ruffled her long white hair. You don't have to worry about anything. This is the normal development of the world. You are this world's Tao protector. Well, you can be considered a Tao protector for the time being. No matter what happens, you will be the first to have the right to go to the God realm. You can do as you see fit. If you want to support a faction, you can participate in it or not. After all, it's your own world. Yao Guang took the opportunity when he let go of her hand to quietly tidy up her hair. She whispered, "It seems so casual, but also a little complicated. Just do as you wish." Yin Nuoxing smiled casually. "Go back. I'm just informing you that your world has been settled." Yao Guang nodded and took a step forward. She suddenly retracted her foot and turned to look at Yin Nuoxing. "You all are going to war? Soon. Our people have already arrived at the front line. I was delayed for a few days because of my injuries, but it's about time." Yin Nuoxing nodded. Yao Guang pondered for a moment and bowed deeply to him. "Thank you for what you have done for us. I wish you all the best. I will go to that world as soon as possible." Yin Nuoxing reached out to help her up and patted her head. He smiled and said, "Go." After watching Yao Guang return to her world, Yin Nuoxing turned around and pulled Tao Heaven away from this space. They returned to the God realm. The two of them floated in the sky and bumped into a cloud. Yin Nuoxing was just about to settle another matter when Tao Heaven suddenly giggled and said, "Unknowingly, you've kidnapped another little girl. Big brother, is this how you trick girls?" Yin Nuoxing staggered and almost fell from the sky. He looked at the woman in white and gold with a dark expression. "What do you mean by trick? When did I ever trick people?" Tao Heaven giggled and moved forward. His different colored eyes occupied Yin Nuoxing's entire vision. "I don't care. Big brother lied to me." Yin Nuoxing, he sighed deeply. If he continued to dwell on this issue, one of them would definitely go crazy. "No, from the looks of the situation, he should be the one going crazy. It was better to quickly change the topic. Now, let's talk about your business. You know about our business. Young Master Shun will take care of that world. What do you plan to do? Stay in the God realm? Or go back to that world? You don't plan to follow me to the front line, do you? It would have been better if he hadn't asked the last question. Now that he did, Dao Heaven was furious. He rolled back 20 times and put a distance of 1,000 feet between them. He screamed at the top of his lungs, "I don't want to." When you guys fight, it's like the end of the world, or rather, the collapse of the void. Weak little mortals like us will die just by watching. Big brother, your creed when fighting is that you don't care about life. You play with your own life and forcefully play with other people's lives. I won't go. I won't go even if you beat me to death. Yun Nuashing twirled her hair. She suddenly felt that this guy's last sentence perfectly fit the fighting style of the God Realm. For a moment, she couldn't refute. Speaking of which, this girl asked for it. CU and the other girls knew to sneak out before he went berserk. She, on the other hand, had watched the entire war from a first-person perspective. She was so scared that she was traumatized. Looking at her angry stare at him, she was so cute. I'm just mentioning it. You really won't make much of a difference in the battle over there. Judging from the situation at the front line of the void, they must have mobilized all the forces in the world of order. The participants had to be at the post-God tier. However, he had said not long ago that there was no choice if they didn't want to fight. There might be many reasons: post-battle phobia, fear of the apocalyptic scene, or even more reasons. In any case, he couldn't force others to join the battle. It wouldn't do any good to the war situation. On the contrary, it would affect the strength of the normal battle there. So it was expected that Dao Heaven didn't want to go. I thought about it. I still want to go with you. Yin Nuashing's foot slipped. She felt her waist hurt a little. Cough. Don't misunderstand. I'm definitely not going to fight. When he met Yin Nuashing's extremely strange gaze, Dao Heaven coughed lightly and calmly tried to smooth things over. It's just that no matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't think of a good place to go. If you're not in the God Realm, there's no point in wandering around alone. So, I had no choice but to go with you. Yin Nuashing looked deeply at the girl and sighed. Do as you wish. Just don't scare yourself. You're probably hiding in my soul anyway. Speaking of which, my soul isn't a relay station or a hotel. You can't always hide in there. Dao Heaven asked, is there a place to stay at the front line? Oh, there used to be, but Vast Sky and the others took it away. There probably won't be any for a while. Also, the battlefield is in a void. There won't be a place to stay. Then it's settled. It's empty anyway. It doesn't matter if one more person stays, right? Dao Heaven said with a smile. Yin Nuashing. So his soul was still being treated as a hotel. Dao Heaven waved her hand in front of his face and pulled him forward. All right, let's not bother about this. Didn't you say you had something else to do? Yin Nuashing let out a long sigh and nodded. He really did have something else to do. He looked around and casually came to a mountain peak. He waved his hand and opened up a spacious space. He shouted inside, "Come out. It's your stop." There was some movement in the space, and a moment later, a person walked out of it. It was a humanoid creature that was shining with a scarlet light. It was the chaos derivative that had inexplicably gained sentience. When Dao Heaven saw it, he was shocked. He hurriedly pulled Yin Nuashing and wanted to retreat, thinking that something had happened. Yin Nuashing patted the girl's shoulder to reassure her. He said to the chaos spawn, "This is the realm of the gods. I don't know if you know this world. I think I've heard them talk about it before, but I'm not sure where it is. Is this the realm of the gods?" It walked a few steps to the edge of the mountain peak. Looking at the scenery in front of it, it couldn't help but say, "It's a bit more barren than I thought." Cough, cough. Yin Nuashing coughed violently a few times and smiled bitterly. It's just finished a battle. It's still recovering. We can only wait for it to recover slowly. Battle. Oh, no wonder it's like the other world. It's filled with anxiousness and busyness after a battle. Although it's a bit barren, it looks like a very beautiful world. I can feel an astonishing amount of vitality, but it seems to be a bit smaller than the other world. The chaos spawn nodded. Yin Nuashing was speechless. In terms of size, the realm of the gods was indeed much smaller than the spirit condensation continent. The latter was the only continent in the entire world. It was accompanied by the void. There was no sun, moon, or stars. The realm of the gods was inside a world of light. No, he would choke on his own words if he continued to dwell on these issues. Anyway, I brought you here. Do you have any plans? The scarlet light on the chaos spawn's body flickered. Was that a sign that it was thinking? Then it walked a few steps around and shook its head. I haven't thought of anything yet. I want to walk around this world and see this beautiful world. Oh, Yin Nuashing responded. He took out Huey's token and threw it to the chaos spawn. Then take this with you. Put it wherever it's obvious. This is Huey's token from a very prestigious person in this world. As a non-order nature of you is a little too strong, it's hard to hide. We don't know how other people view non-order beings. But with this, you won't have to worry about people looking for trouble. The chaos spawn took the small scepter token and hung it around its neck. It nodded. Thank you. Don't worry. I won't bring trouble to this world. I'm not worried about that. Yin Nuashing smiled and shrugged. Let's go. We'll meet again if there's a chance. Watching Yin Nuashing and Demon leave, the chaos spawn did a rather human-like action. It blew into its hands and then walked slowly along the path on the other side of the mountain. The weather was a little cold. What did you get a chaos spawn? How can it talk? Demon could not hold back his words. He asked after walking for a while. It was found on that continent. Among the trillions of chaos spawns, there was an individual with sentience. It's unbelievable, isn't it? I didn't expect such a strange energy body to develop sentience and become alive. Demon was speechless. It's quite strange. However, she felt that the 1 in a trillion probability was even more unbelievable. She did not expect that a disposable cannon fodder could develop sentience. After taking a stroll outside, Yun Nuashing and Dao Heaven returned to the mountain peak. As soon as they landed, they heard Little Angel arguing with another unrelenting voice. They couldn't help but turn their heads. The only person who could make Little Angel feel troubled and argue with her was probably her younger sister. As expected, Yuan Kong was arguing loudly with the Little Angel. Well, it looked more like the younger sister was throwing a tantrum and trying to get the attention of her elder sister. Moreover, Yuan Kong was being stared at by the latter. Yuan Kong's voice was getting weaker and weaker. In the end, she lowered her head and could not even speak. Yin Nuashing sighed and walked over helplessly. What's wrong? Haven't you discussed it? There's not much time left. The Little Angel heard the voice and turned her head. When she saw him, she was delighted. Little star, just in time. You can tell Yuan Kong that she insists on going to the front line with us, no matter how we persuade her. As she spoke, she couldn't help but sigh and shake her head in frustration. Yin Nuashing's gaze moved from the Little Angel to Yuan Kong, and then back to the Little Angel. After a few rounds, she said to Yuan Kong, "You want to go to the Void front line with us?" Yuan Kong looked at him and felt extremely uncomfortable. She lowered her head and mumbled. Due to her elder sister's power, she couldn't say anything. She could only keep muttering in her heart. She shook her head and then nodded fiercely. The Little Angel's face was in a mess. She couldn't even flap her wings. She really didn't know what this girl was thinking. Yin Nuashing thought for a moment. Suddenly, she reached out and grabbed a feather from the Little Angel. Then, she used her soul energy to condense a soul seed. She crouched down and placed it on Yuan Kong's hand. Here, your sister's soul seed. Yuan Kong's eyes lit up. She reached out and grabbed the seed from her brother's hand. She smiled sweetly. Then I won't go. The Little Angel's face became even more confused. However, she did not say anything when she saw the happy look on Yuan Kong's face. Coincidentally, Yin Nuashing pulled her to the side. When they were a little further away, she said in a strange tone through her soul, "Why is she suddenly so obedient?" Yin Nuashing looked at her and said helplessly, "The connection between the two of you has always been through the connection of the same race. It should be unique in this world. However, it is not as close as the connection through the soul. That is all the little girl wants." Yin Nuoxing patted the little angel's head. There's not much time left before we depart. This time, we'll be gone for many years. Spend some time with the little girl. The little angel tilted her head and looked into the pair of black eyes for a long time. Then, she nodded obediently and turned to look for Yuan Kong. Yin Nuoxing subconsciously let out a sigh. She realized that she had done something subconsciously. Only then did she realize that it was winter in the realm of the gods. She did not know what it would be like the next time she came back. It seems that you were quite busy. Yin Nuoxing was frowning as he thought about the next thing he needed to do. A pleasant voice came from the side, accompanied by the crisp sound of silver bracelets clinking. He turned around and saw Qingyu in white walking over from the side. The bracelet on her wrist was making a crisp sound. Her pretty face pulled up into a smile. I'm busy with some things. I am busy with some trivial things. I'm also busy with my funeral. Yin Nuoxing rubbed his forehead in distress and sighed. Back then, when I was leisurely lying on the cloud, not thinking about anything and not doing anything, it was more relaxing. Now, Qingyu's calm face did not show any emotion. She smiled and walked to his side. She looked up at the white clouds floating in the sky with him and asked casually, Are you going to depart? It is about time. It is about time to leave after I explain everything. Qingyu replied softly. She tilted her head to look at him and said, Lord Fengling, I want to go back. It is not difficult, but at this time, Yin Nuoxing sighed and found the coordinates of that world in his mind. He threw a strand of soul energy into Qingyu's mind. These are the coordinates of that world. It is fine if you do not understand it. This strand of soul energy will guide you to that world. I should send you off, but the current situation is not on the way. That void region is a little special. It is difficult to directly teleport there. It will take some time to bring you back. Yin Nuoxing scratched his head in distress and sighed again. He forced his bitter face to change into a smile. Come to the realm of the gods to play when you have time. Oh no, the realm of the gods is not fun at all right now. Forget it. Pretend I didn't say anything. After that, he sighed again bitterly. Qingyu covered her mouth and laughed softly. Compared to the Lord Fengling who was guarding the entire world alone, you are much more real now. Yin Nuoxing grinned. Don't laugh at me. Qingyu smiled, but did not say anything. She extended her hand to him. Yin Nuoxing was slightly surprised. He adjusted his expression and put on a smile again. He reached out and shook her soft hand. Have a safe journey. Qingyu nodded. I will come find you when the time comes. Yin Nuoxing watched the white figure leave. He sighed. Today was a day for all kinds of farewells. In short, after sending Qingyu out of the void of the realm of the gods, he returned to the mountain peak. Just as he was about to make his final preparations, Dao Heaven jumped out from the side and smiled evilly at him. Another one. Yin Nuoxing spat out a mouthful of water, his face full of black lines. Did you count all the people who were close to me? Could this guy be Chu Yingzhan's reincarnation? No, was it his previous life? Why did they say this in such a despicable tone with similar expressions? Didn't you hear him say, I'll come find you when the time comes? This is a show. Dao Heaven moved closer and poked Yin Nuoxing's back with his slender, jade-like finger. This when the time comes is probably going to last until the end of time. Yin Nuoxing sighed bitterly. He felt terrible whenever time was mentioned, because when time was mentioned, he was reminded of that stupid thing in the void. When he thought of that, he couldn't help but sigh again. It was said that sighing would shorten one's life. He might have lost tens of thousands of years of his life today. Speaking of which, could eternal life shorten one's life? Sigh. Then let's just treat it as sighing to age. Sigh. Chapter 1472. After 1,000 years, Yin Nuoxing and the underworld were once again engaged in an almost eternal battle in the void. That was for the others, but for Yin Nuoxing himself, the only battle he had with the underworld was the one he had fought with the underworld. Other than that, there were no other battles. This was actually the first time in the Dark Age that they were going to face the underworld head-on. According to the original plan, a portion of the heavenly gods would head to the front lines first and wait for a period of time to establish a defensive line before calling for the other Rebirth Realm champions to come and support the defensive line. It was said that this was the result of the battle 1,000 years ago, so the scene of 60 to 70% of the heavenly gods rushing to the void did not happen this time. Those people were still repairing the heavenly gods and were still secretly preparing, waiting for the call from the front lines. It was likely that the other realms of order in the void were doing the same. The battle in the void is more complicated, and this battle will last for a very long time. It can be said to be an eternal battle. The situation is complicated and ever-changing. Yin Nuoxing paced around the room and looked at the two girls who were leaning against the edge of the bed. This time, I don't actually plan to bring you two along. I'll leave you two to recuperate in the heavenly gods and slowly grow. Maybe, before Yin Nuoxing could finish his words, he noticed that the two girls' eyes were darting around as if they were thinking of something else. He felt a little helpless. So, did you two hear what I said? Yes. Siyu quickly nodded and sat up a little. She looked at Yin Nuoxing with a very serious expression and said, I think we can actually follow you. Hey, don't worry. Siyu smiled and waved her hand. Sister Ming already told us yesterday. Little Star, you just came in and said it again. Blue Phoenix and I have seriously thought about it before telling you the answer. Yin Nuoxing frowned and was about to speak when he saw Siyu's even more serious expression. From the day I stood on this side, I've already made up my mind. Staying in the heavenly gods and growing steadily is a good choice, but it's not the best choice. A temporary peace may not necessarily be better in the future. It won't make me better able to stand by your side. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. She turned to look at Feng Qingwang. She didn't say anything. She looked at him quietly and nodded. She agreed with Siyu's words. Everyone would like a peaceful and stable life. However, that wouldn't make them more determined to stand by his side in the future. Since they had already made up their minds that day, they should do something. Feng Qinghuang's expression was the same as Feng Er's. Although he had told himself many times that the woman in front of him was Feng Er, she didn't have any memories of them. He couldn't ignore that. He tried not to pay too much attention to that. He just got along with her naturally. Until now, he saw the same expression as Feng Er that day, the same stubbornness. Her expression was exactly the same as Siyu's at this moment. Yin Nuoxing rubbed his eyes with a headache. After a while, he sighed softly. I say, this is completely different from dealing with the distorted race. Not to mention whether or not the underworld will send people over. The tide of darkness formed by the death mist of the abyss is countless times stronger than the tide of chaos. They're no longer defenseless and can only be bullied by you, we all know. We just said it. Sister Ming already told us very clearly. She told us everything very clearly. Siyu smiled and interrupted Yin Nuoxing. What she meant was that she still made the decision despite knowing the situation. Yin Nuoxing didn't know what to say. The three of them stared at each other in silence for a few minutes. In the end, Yin Nuoxing was defeated. He let out a long sigh and reached out to the two girls. Give me one of your soul origin fragments. Siyu and Feng Qingwang were obedient this time. They knew what he was going to do. They happily handed over the soul fragments that they had prepared beforehand. Yin Nuoxing was stunned when he saw the soul fragments that had been stabilized. He was wondering why the two girls hadn't recovered yet. It turned out that they were weak because of the soul fragments that had been stripped away not long ago. With a very complicated expression, Yin Nuoxing dashed out of the house. He was confused as he walked towards the spiritual temple. When he passed by the forest, he glanced at the little angel at the edge of the forest. Although she didn't turn around, her wings froze. It was obvious that she had noticed that he was looking at her. However, she probably felt guilty and didn't intend to turn around. Yin Nuoxing sighed and went to the spiritual temple. It didn't take long for him to deal with the soul fragments of the two girls. After he settled the soul fragments that Dao Heaven had just given him, he let out a sigh of relief. Although some unexpected things had happened, it didn't affect the current plan and progress. It wouldn't be too late to divide those things in detail when they reached the front line. As for where they were going, since there were no directions in the void, they divided the void into 4 directions with the celestial realm as the center. Hui and the others went to the void front line to the west of the celestial realm, while they went to the north to guard it. After a few days of fighting, the situation had stabilized a little. The various worlds of order should be regulating and distributing their forces. They just didn't know how strong the new void front line was. It was also because of this that Yin Nuoxing hurriedly continued to go to the void front line before he could tidy up his body. He was worried that something uncontrollable would happen if he was a day or two late. After all, from his point of view, as long as they didn't die and didn't stop him from beating people up, there shouldn't be any problems. After finishing his preparations, Yin Nuoxing waited for one more day. When the 5,000 to 6,000 casualties in the spiritual temple had all recovered, he prepared to lead people into battle. At this moment, several thousand people were gathered in front of the spiritual temple, but they didn't give off the same solemn and orderly feeling as an army. The carefree nature of heavenly gods ingrained in their bones made them solemn only when they were fighting or discussing important matters of life, such as being forced to marry by their relatives. But now, everyone was standing here. There was no other way to describe it. Yin Nuoxing was already rejoicing over the fact that this place wasn't as noisy as a market. The teleportation path to the void front lines has been constructed. Yin Nuoxing turned his head to look at the people who were orderly and not orderly. They were all wearing solemn expressions, and he was mainly looking at the people who didn't belong to the celestial realm. You? Well, I don't know who you are or who you are, but the current situation is special. It doesn't really matter whether you're divided or not. Just find your own leaders or nominate a leader to manage your own people. If you meet your people at the void front lines, those who need to return to their teams can do so. The rest can follow me for now. Okay. The people of the celestial realm answered in a heroic manner. Yin Nuoxing, damn it, are you guys here to cause trouble? The people from the various worlds of order who were temporarily rescued also responded. Yin Nuoxing counted his family members and confirmed that there weren't any problems. Jing Yuanji's energy tower was also ready. He then led the way to the void front lines. A large group of people behind him soared into the sky like a flock of birds and disappeared into the void in an instant. The journey in the void ended in a short while. Before Yin Nuoxing and the others returned from the deep void to the shallow void, they already felt a strong stench. The chaotic aura left behind by the battle between the abyssal death mist and the power of order permeated the air. Even with the protection of the order barrier, many people couldn't help but frown when they felt this aura. The battle this time is probably more intense than the battle 1,000 years ago. Jing Yuanji couldn't help but frown when she felt this aura. The collapse of the void front lines is a great opportunity. If I were the underworld, I would also seize this opportunity. Not to mention taking down the world of order in one go, it would be good to push the blockade that has been stagnant for 1,000 years forward. Yin Nuoxing said as he sensed the movement in the shallow void. A moment later, he found a place where the aura of order was strong. He turned the passage and headed there. The group disappeared into the deep void and left the deep void where they were rushing to travel. In the empty void region, a large amount of order energy and the fused chaos energy caused the void to become chaotic. The purple and black void gradually changed. In a shallow layer of the void seal reassembled, and Yin Nuo planet could clearly feel the aura of Hui's energy from the void seal. The hastily assembled void seal was only to prevent the underworld from taking advantage of the chaos to circle around. Its defensive power was strong, but when it was transformed from the order barrier, it only strengthened the seal, surveillance, warning, and other effects. Its defensive power was not particularly good. Otherwise, the previous void seal would not have been destroyed so quickly. After the previous collapse, the void seal was covered with several layers of other defensive barriers, probably to make up for its lack of defensive power. Yin Nuoxing and the others emerged from the deep void. The first thing they saw was dozens of world lights surrounding the 1,000 miles behind the void blockade. At the front closest to the blockade, there was a city similar to the first city in the void. However, it was smaller in scale and the layout appeared to be rushed. It could only be used as a foothold. They could also see that the world lights were connected to the city. Many people were moving between the city and the world lights. This was the real battlefield. Moreover, the world lights should have come from many void regions. It seemed that there was more than one person with such thoughts. In the dark space outside the blockade, there were traces of energy radiance flashing. It appeared that there was a small-scale battle going on. Yin Nuashing was a little curious. Based on the characteristics of the abyssal death shroud and its spawns, they would attack until the end once they started. The scene of a small-scale battle before his eyes was a little beyond his understanding. The arrival of Yin Nuashing and his group from the upper plane had attracted the attention of many people in the city. All eyes were focused on them. Some people were very smart and ran towards a certain part of the city, as if they were going to report to someone. Yin Nuashing looked around and did not care about anyone. He brought his people to the place closest to the blockade and looked at the battle in the distance. The black clouds were dark red with madness and destruction. It was really the abyss death fog that they had not seen for a long time. They had not seen it for a long time. It's a little strange. There are high-intensity energy fluctuations coming from the abyssal death shroud. However, there are only a few places where the battle is really happening. Furthermore, the Order life forms that are gathered in the city have no intention of going to help. It's as if two armies are confronting each other in a faraway position. Those small-scale battles that have broken out are just small frictions in the war zone between the two emperors. Neither side has the intention to charge and break through the enemy's lines. Jing Yuanji whispered in Yin Nuashing's ear. He nodded in agreement. Compared to the chaotic tide, the dark tide that was formed by the abyssal death shroud was much more powerful. It was crazier and more destructive. The only similarity between the two was that once an order was given, they would carry it out to the end. Even if they were ordered to directly flatten the upper realm, as long as they were not completely wiped out, none of the spawns would stop. The situation of the two armies confronting each other was obviously unusual. Just as they gathered on the city wall and looked at the abyssal death shroud, a group of people suddenly came from the city. The appearance of this group of people caused some commotion in the city. It seemed that they were some important people. Excuse me, excuse me, excuse me. Friends from the world of order, can you ask your leader to come out and say something? A somewhat childish voice came from behind. The group of people moved to the left and right. Yin Nuashing waited until the person who spoke quickly came not far behind him. Only then did he casually turn his head around and saw a few people with serious expressions walking in front of him. Wow, why are you here? Is the matter in the celestial realm over? A surprised voice came from below. Yin Nuashing was stunned for a moment. He slowly lowered his head and saw a boy who was about 11 or 12 years old. The boy was wearing a golden robe and was looking at him with a surprised gaze. The boy could not help but say to him, "That day when we left in a hurry, we all thought that the celestial realm was doomed. Since you guys are here safe and sound, does that mean that it has ended peacefully?" Yes, it has ended, but the process was not peaceful at all. Yin Nuashing thought for a moment. This boy was the leader of the Demon Gods League. The aura of order around him was tainted with an aura of life that did not belong to the human race. He did not expect that the one who came to the north to guard it was him. Moreover, upon closer look, there seemed to be more non-human existences in this city. Most of them were probably from the Demon Gods League. It just so happens that some of your people have been resurrected by us. You can check it yourself. Oh, I saw it from afar. I thought I saw it wrong. The boy nodded and waved his hand. A few figures appeared from the space beside him and walked into the formation of more than 3,000 people. The people who belonged to the Demon Gods League also quickly walked out of the formation and gathered behind him with a few figures in front of them. You came at the right time. We are busy here. Those guys have been confronting us for a day. We can't fight, but we can't defend either. We're just waiting here. If you come, you should be able to break this situation. The boy pointed in a direction. Let's sit over there and talk. Let's talk here. I can take a look at the situation of the abyssal death mist. Yin Nuashing shook his head. But first, let's talk about your situation. I have never heard that the abyssal death mist would take the initiative to stop fighting. It seems that such a thing has never happened before. The boy scratched his head. We don't know about this either. Aren't you guys clearer than us? You don't know about this situation either? Yin Nuashing shook his head. The abyssal death mist that we encountered before was not like this. They would mindlessly fight until the end of the void. As long as they did not receive any other orders or achieve their goal, they would not change. Speaking of this, he also mentioned some of the characteristics of the abyssal death mist. However, the boys said that they already knew about it. We seem to have made a lot of mental preparations for them. The sudden, unexpected situation at this moment made them think that it was something that they did not mention. In the end, when the leader came over, he realized that he was also confused. Yin Nuashing twirled a strand of hair with his finger. After thinking for a moment, he said something like a core has probably appeared. If that is the case, the level of this war will be raised by several levels. Core? What core? Something like an energy body that has vague sentience. If there is one, it would probably be hiding behind the Dark Tide army, only commanding and not fighting. It would only come out and participate in the battle personally when there are special circumstances. That probably explains why the Dark Tide would suddenly have such order. Tell me about the latest battle report. I want to hear about the strength of the Dark Tide. There's no need to be too detailed. Yin Nuashing said. The boy scratched his chest. Simply put, that black. Oh, that thing that you guys said is a manifestation of the abyssal death mist has the power of a novice heavenly god to a mid-tier heavenly god of origin and mid-tier power. In other words, it is not the time for an all-out attack. What are they hesitating for? Yin Nuashing tilted his head and muttered to himself, interrupting him. How do you know that it's mid-tier power? The boy scratched his chest and looked at him in confusion. The abyssal death mist is a strange energy that was split from an unknown object as a component in a source of energy. The manifestation of the abyssal death mist possesses a portion of that unknown object's power. If I'm not mistaken, the highest level of manifestation of the abyssal death mist should be peak reciprocity, but you haven't seen it in the past few days. It could only be that they don't plan on using that level of power. They've stopped themselves. An unknown object? The boy and the others felt like their eardrums were about to explode when they heard that. Just what level would it be? All right, there was no need to think about it. Just a manifestation of the abyssal death mist energy could reach the peak of reciprocity. So how could it be weaker than that? It was clearly impossible. It could only be a life form at that level. Yin Nuashing sank into his thoughts. The reason why the underworld had stopped, or the reason why they had found a good opportunity but had yet to launch an all-out attack. Either they found traces of what they're looking for, or they're speeding up one of their plans and reaching a critical moment. Since they still have the strength to launch a large-scale battle, eliminating the latter, the only possibility is that they've found what they're looking for. What is it? I don't know. It's just a guess. The number of times we've come into direct contact with them is extremely limited. The number of times we've communicated with them is, let's call it 0 for now, so we don't know the exact situation either. We can only deduce that they're looking for something from a few clues. The boy frowned and grimaced to express his vexation. It's so confusing. The abyssal death mist really is confusing. All right, let's not talk about that for now. With that, he waved his hand and changed the topic. Do you have any plans? Did you have any plans in the beginning? Yin Nuashing asked in return. If we had to talk about the beginning, we didn't have any plans in the beginning. We couldn't break in even if we wanted to, so we could only defend to the death. However, the other side didn't attack either. The small battles you've seen right now are just probing forces. Both sides are probing and counterattacking very tacitly, as if they're trying to find each other's bottom line. The boy shrugged in frustration. What's the situation like elsewhere? I mean the other places in the Void front line. From the communication over the past few days, the situation is more or less the same. After the first 3 days of large-scale battle, the battle over at the Black Abyssal Death Mist spawn suddenly stopped. In the end, just like what you're seeing now, there's a stalemate here. No one knows what happened. Yin Nuashing took some time to converse with Hui and their souls, and got a similar answer. There was a tendency for the battle to stop. It was as if the other side had a seizure and then returned to normal. No one could tell what was growing in the other side's head. Yin Nuashing thought for a moment, her left hand unconsciously snapping her fingers. After thinking for a while, she suddenly said, I have an idea. Oh, let's hear it. You're the most powerful here. You're the biggest. With one command, you can mobilize the forces in dozens of worlds. It's up to you to decide whether to fight or to defend. The young man pointed at the city and the world lights behind it and said straightforwardly. After joining the Order faction and ceasing the war with the other factions, his views had also changed, just like Min Nuashing. Although Yin Nuashing felt that the things we had shown them were too threatening, forcing them to change their views, Yin Nuashing felt that the things we had shown them were too threatening, forcing them to change. Fight, but you guys cover me. Yin Nuashing walked to the edge of the city wall and looked at the clouds and mist that were flashing wildly in the darkness. Her eyes flashed. I'll kill my way in and see what they're up to. Everyone's eyes widened in horror. Kill his way in? This guy could really say things that made people's hearts jump all the time. Jing Yuanji quickly pulled Yin Nuashing's arm. Lord Feng, you want to kill your way into the underworld? How is that possible? Hearing that, and noticing everyone's expression, Yin Nuashing knew that everyone had misunderstood. I'm just going to take a look at the abyssal death mist and see if there's any unusual phenomenon that we haven't seen before. As for the rest of you, just help me stand guard outside. If possible, have a group of highly mobile and stealthy people bypass this region from the depths of the void and go to the back to see if there's anything. We haven't had information about the lower planes for a long time. Chapter 1473. Yin Nuashing could have done something as foolish as guarding a quarter of the void blockade alone if his body was normal. However, he himself said that it was a foolish thing to do, and he would not do it for no reason. Moreover, he had not fully recovered and could only talk, move, and fight. It would be fine if he used Peerless, but he might still need to use Peerless soon. It would only take a while, and the range would not be large enough to attract all the abyssal death mist spawns in the entire defensive perimeter. Probably, a group of impressive reinforcements had suddenly arrived at the void defensive perimeter. However, most of them did not know who they were, and only heard from their superiors that they were a group of powerful fellows. Now that they were gathering their forces and preparing to go out for a big fight, many of them moved forward curiously and saw the few people standing outside the void blockade from some distance away. When they saw the leader, and when she inadvertently turned her head to reveal half of her face while replying, they felt as if their hearts and knees were shot with arrows and almost knelt down. Yin Nuashing sensed some strange gazes and turned his head, only to see the strange expressions on the faces of the people gathered inside the void blockade. He felt a little puzzled and turned back after a few glances. Are your men all gathered? The youth crossed his arms and stared at the abyssal death mist in the distance with an insufferably arrogant look. He nodded slightly at the question. Almost all of them. Some of them are still guarding the city and would quickly reinforce if there is a situation. He paused for a moment and lowered his arms. But, do you really not need us to go in? Yin Nuashing nodded. All of you just need to hold the fort outside. I know the abyssal death mist better than any of you, and I know some ways to deal with it. The situation inside is complicated, and one more person would be more trouble than benefit. The youth shrugged and looked at the situation on the other side of the void. He stretched out his little arm and waved it gently. Get into formation, we're going. This voice, which contained the power of rules, reverberated in the city behind them. The experts who had been waiting for a long time were immediately energized. They tidied up their weapons and charged up their energy. When they saw the group of people in the lead fly out, they followed them out of the void seal. The mighty momentum made the void seal fall silent for a moment. The youth came to the spot where the skirmishes broke out and called back those who were fighting in that area. The abyssal death shroud spawns noticed the situation and looked at them a few times in a very human-like manner. Then, they scrambled into the abyssal death shroud, looking back as they retreated, as if observing their movements. That was not a description, but they were really crawling across the void with 7 hands and 8 legs. The abyssal death shroud spawns were not just humanoid like the chaos spawns. In terms of appearance, the abyssal death shroud spawns were much more disgusting than the chaos spawns. That bunch of grotesque things made people wonder if they had run into hell. I've never seen a situation like this before. Looks like a core might have appeared. Even if it's not, it would be something similar. Yin Nuashing muttered. He had deduced the term core from the tide of chaos. The tide of chaos that he encountered in the spirit condensation continent had indeed appeared some eternal class cores. If the core was destroyed, the remaining chaos spawns would be utterly defeated. He was not sure if that characteristic was something they had, or if they had learned it from the abyssal death shroud. The youth spread out his hands in response. Then, he waved at the army behind him and shouted, "Spread out the formation. Fortify the formation. From now on, push forward bit by bit until you are within 100 miles of the abyssal death shroud." Loud shouts resounded through the void. Order energy that carried the characteristics of humans and other races surged out of the void like an ocean. It was hard to describe. In short, all sorts of things spread out in the void. Finally, with the energy of the Demon Gods League as the main core, they connected into a huge formation. Just by aiming at the abyssal death shroud, it made people feel that the non-order presence in the area was greatly weakened. "All of you, stay here. Be good," Yin Nuashing said to Yu, Jing Yuanji, and the others beside him. Then, he slowly took a step forward and looked at the abyssal death shroud that was surging with monstrous waves because of their arrival. "Nice to meet you. Although we have met a few times, this is the first time we have formally met. Anyway, let's say hello." What answered him was the abyssal death shroud that had turned into a pot of boiling oil. The area that was off-limits to the living suddenly churned violently. Countless black shrouds split out from that area and rapidly condensed into physical forms in the void. They turned into all sorts of bizarre monsters that made people's scalp tingle, stomach churn, and heartbeat quicken at first glance. It was as if some half-corroded and half-melted creatures were randomly pieced together with another dismembered thing. Some of them were giants with thick beast-like arms and legs, and a dozen pairs of eyes on their heads. Others were simply flesh that had not fully assembled. Their flesh and blood were turned outwards as they struggled to extend many bizarre appendages. One of the people behind the youth could not help but rub his stomach. "Luckily, I haven't eaten for years. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'd be drooling right now." While everyone felt disgusted, they also agreed. After defending this place for a few days, every time they saw those strange and disgusting things, they would feel their minds go blank and their stomachs churn. "A nightmare," Yin Nuashing suddenly muttered. He suddenly thought of something. These abyssal death shroud spawns had such strange appearances. Looking at the form of the humans in the underworld, logically speaking, their aesthetics should not have been faulty. They might not have deliberately made the spawns look like that, but they had such a disgusting appearance in the first place. Perhaps part of the consciousness of that component remained in the abyssal death shroud, and hence the spawns looked like that. However, he did not know what kind of nightmare could produce such strange and disgusting things. Reserve only 30% of your power. Everyone, attack as you wish. There was not much time for him to be distracted. As the League Master of the Demon Gods Alliance gave the order, the light of order behind him abruptly bloomed with endless radiance. Millions of energy radiances carried various bizarre attacking methods as they traversed the void, tearing a zone of nothingness in the void as they swept violently towards the army of spawns that were charging towards them with overflowing malice. While the others on the void battlefront were attacking with all their might, the warriors of the divine realm had also prepared their energy towers. They found the location of the nodes of the Great Formation, and teams of people started to activate the energy towers, strengthening the order and regularity of the energy on their side. At the same time, the attacks from the energy towers also turned into streaks of stars that cut across the void, rushing into the army of spawns and causing violent energy storms time and time again. "I'm going. You guys guard this place. Don't worry about me, and don't worry about missing your aim. The power of order will be under my control." A brilliant white light gradually appeared on Yin Nuashing's body. However, this time the light was not intense. Only his long hair and eyes had turned brilliant white. He greeted the others and then walked out from the front of the formation. The energy of order surged wildly on his body, and even the void started to boil because of his arrival. Rings of energy shockwaves suddenly exploded with his body as the center. The shockwaves were like layers upon layers of ocean waves that slammed into the void, instantly annihilating the spawns that had broken through the energy blockade. When the energy shockwaves of order swept across her body, Jing Yuanji could clearly feel that her power and regularity had been strengthened by a notch. She could not help but turn around and see Lord Feng rushing towards the abyssal death mist like a brilliant white energy storm. It seems that after the war in the Divine Realm not too long ago, Lord Feng has taken a liking to this kind of energy output method. The little angel emerged from Feng Qinghuang's body. She looked at the person who had gone far away and slowly shook her head. No, he just likes to mess around. Even if he is not fully recovered, he still likes to mess around. No one knew what changes Yin Nuoxing had gone through after that battle. In any case, from the looks of it, he had probably become addicted to it. In the few times that they had followed this lord to battle, they had not seen him unleash his power so recklessly. At this moment, he had practically become a moving, destructive storm that could take away swathes of spawns at any time. If they were not careful, he might even reap their own life force. When he went crazy, he would not even let himself go. Yin Nuoxing looked at those disgusting and strange spawns that were rushing towards him like a swarm of bees. They were all destroyed by his energy storm and the even larger energy storm behind him. Suddenly, he had an idea. He intentionally weakened the energy storm in front of him, allowing a few of the more normal-sized spawns to rush in front of him. He grabbed them with one hand, and with a strong squeeze of his slender hand, he scattered the spawn's bodies and condensed them into a ball of abyssal death mist. He looked at it for a moment and habitually threw it into his mouth. The youth, holy shit, what is he doing? Eating the abyssal death mist alive? Had he gone mad? Now, should they not think about how they should deal with this big pervert if this observer became a member of the army of spawns? Lord Feng's special energy identification method. Jing Yuanji was exceptionally calm. Seeing the youth's twisted face, she waved her hand carelessly. It's basic. Calm down. The youth. As expected, that fellow was not a normal person. Who would swallow a bomb? Yin Nuoxing let out a long breath and let the storm in front of him return to normal. Anyway, he had become strange. The chaotic energy left in his body in the secret artifact space was much more ridiculous than the non-orderly nature of the mist of god destruction. He was not worried that this abyssal death mist could do anything to him. If it wanted to reverse and infect him into a spawn, he did some calculations. Since he was not clear about the difference between the realms of the primeval realm, he temporarily used the uplift as a measurement unit. If he used the abyssal death mist that was 5 or 6 times the capacity of the uplift to wear him down, there was a high probability that it could turn him into a spawn. The premise was that he did not use the origin energy. However, this kind of situation would basically not happen. When faced with non-orderly energy and the energy of that demonic shadow, the origin energy would have some reaction. However, when faced with the mist of god destruction, if he did not actively touch it, it would not have any reaction to the abyssal death mist. They were both non-orderly energy. This difference in treatment made Yin Nuoxing feel very strange. He could not find a reason for this phenomenon. Lord Feng, the intensity of the abyssal death mist activity is continuously increasing. Please be very careful. Jing Yuanji's loud reminder reverberated in Yin Nuoxing's mind. He recovered from his absent-minded state and glanced at the abyssal death mist's main camp that was already very close to them. They were like a huge black wall dotted with red patterns right in front of them. In fact, it was an incomparably huge storm circle. It was just that the area it encompassed was so huge that he could not see its arc at all. After Jing Yuanji's reminder, a group of gigantic manifestations suddenly emerged from the huge black wall in front of them. Their crooked and extremely core forms made quite a number of people feel so disgusted that they almost vomited bile. At this moment, the warriors from the divine realm were all rejoicing. Damn it, they were all energy life forms and had long since lost their internal organs. Otherwise, they would probably vomit to their heart's content right now. The abyssal death mist has sensed his threat. The young man's face twitched fiercely when he saw that huge group of people. Just how much of a threat has this fellow been identified as? The battle has just started, and there are already manifestations that are several times stronger than the strongest we've seen so far. So you thought for a moment. They probably think that he's a super threat that could disintegrate the void. Everyone thought so too. Yin Nuoxing's footsteps paused. He suddenly retracted the unceasing order impact that he was releasing into his body. He unhurriedly took out the nether void sword and held the hilt with both hands. His body slowly bent down a little and casually pierced the nether void sword into the void. A loud and clear sound rang through the void. Void, origin, order. A crazy energy shriek was the first to be heard. After that, everyone watched as a circle of bright, white energy shockwave appeared in front of their eyes. It grew from the size of a dot to the size of a huge sphere. In an instant, the sphere exploded. The order energy shockwave that was strong enough to turn the entire sea of void upside down swept across the entire void region. The turbulent energy shockwave was accompanied by a sharp energy shriek. A huge wind pressure came from the front. Everyone instantly felt the void tremble. Even though the entire formation had put up a defensive barrier, they were still blown several hundred feet away by the order energy shockwave. The energy shockwave lasted for about 10 seconds. Everyone scrambled to get up from the void. Their faces were full of doubt. When they saw the people from the realm of the gods looking at them curiously, their faces turned red. Most of them had not experienced Yin Nuoxing's battle. Naturally, they did not know what kind of surprises would happen. Those who did not stabilize their stance in advance were swept into the shockwave and were almost blown into the depths of the void. On the contrary, the warriors from the realm of the gods were already used to Lord Feng's strong winds and waves. They could float around with the wind without moving. Moreover, this time, Lord Feng had released an order energy shockwave. It was not difficult to deal with. Even if they could not react in time, they could still stabilize their bodies. Then, they turned around and saw a group of people lying on the void. After the order energy shockwave, the battlefield in front of him was as clean as when the void was first formed. Not to mention the manifestations, even the abyss death mist in the distance had a layer of skin peeled off. The entire wall had dimmed a little. His face twitched fiercely. He could not help but turn to Jing Yuanji. Is this guy even more perverted than a few days ago? Jing Yuanji thought about what Lord Feng had discussed with her. It was said that the number of types of origin energy that could be used had changed from 4 to more than 20. There were also a few types that would not work at all. As for the reason for this change, it was probably the after effects caused by forcefully mobilizing origin energy to risk his life with Long Sky not long ago. Was it a disaster or a blessing? From the looks of it, the energy shockwave released when his power was restricted was even stronger than a few days ago. So, it could be considered a good thing for the time being. Jing Yuanji nodded. It seems to have become a little stronger. However, Lord Feng has not recovered from his self-restriction, so I'm not sure how strong he is exactly. The young man was speechless. He had a feeling that he could actually sweep through the void by himself. This was also the feeling in the hearts of everyone who had fought with Yin Nuoxing. When everyone regained their senses and looked at the empty battlefield, it was really empty in front of them. They had lost track of Yin Nuoxing. However, thinking about the latter's combat power, there should not be anything here that could stop him. Rather than worrying about him, it was better to be concerned about the battle that was about to erupt. It is observed that the manifestation has taken shape. Its strength has decreased slightly. Its quantity has decreased by 70%. The report from a warrior from the celestial realm made everyone focus their attention and refocus their energy to face the strange things that came out of the abyssal death mist. As for why the strength and number of the abyssal death mist had decreased, it could only be attributed to that guy who rushed into the abyssal death mist alone. The young man took a few steps forward and commanded loudly, "Do not weaken the attacks in your hands." Fortify the formation into battle mode and continue to push forward. Push forward until you are 100 miles away. The formation behind him suddenly changed. The change in the energy nodes caused the formation to change as well. It was a tortoise shell just now, but now it looked like a giant shield with sharp spikes. With tens of thousands of energy nodes as the center, the entire formation exploded with millions of energy attacks at the same time. The power from the world of order cooperated in the simplest way, using their greatest strength to attack the manifestations that were charging towards them. The Abyss Death Mist seemed to have used a large portion of its energy to deal with the freaks that had entered their stomach. The amount of energy used to deal with the people outside was not particularly large. The people were not sure whether the Abyss Death Mist would be able to defend against the Abyss Death Mist. At this moment, as the battle formation continued to push forward, there were already energy attacks that could break through the manifestation's defensive line and charge into the Abyss Death Mist without any damage. The manifestations would also find it difficult to form an effective defensive line. Maintain the formation and spread out horizontally. Everyone, a giant beast that was thousands of miles long emerged from the young man's body. He waved his hand forcefully and said, "Attack the Abyss Death Mist with all your might." No one knew what was going on inside the Abyssal Death Mist. It was a place that could not be described with any language. There was no such thing as rules and order in that place. Everything that one knew about in the real world would be distorted and destroyed, and order would cease to exist. That was a realm of chaos, which was even more terrifying than a land of death. The energy they poured into the Abyssal Death Mist with waves after waves of grand energy explosions and dazzling energy flames told them that their attacks were effective. They had probably destroyed many of the manifestations that were in the process of forming, reverting them back to nothingness when they had just formed. Since 5 minutes ago, no manifestations had appeared on the scene. If it was so easy to deal with the Abyss Death Mist, it would not have been able to destroy the lower realm and half of the middle realm. A large number of manifestations have been observed from the side. They're extremely powerful. It was the same report that spread throughout the Great Formation. The young man, Jing Yuanji, and the others all turned their gazes. They saw that on the left and right of the Great Formation, there were suddenly countless strange and disgusting entities that were madly charging through the void toward them. They were like a group of beasts that were about to starve to death in the desert who had seen fresh meat. Follow the plan from the beginning. Maintain the combat state of the fortification formation. Now, focus the power of the attacks on the side, and maintain a portion of the attacks on the Abyss Death Mist. The young man gave the order unhurriedly. He had already thought of some situations before the attack. He had been emphasizing on maintaining a distance of 100 miles to prevent the manifestations from attacking from the back. After all, although these things looked a little disgusting, strange, and rigid, they gave him a feeling that they were not weaker than an army formed by true origin and heavenly gods. Buzz! A violent energy shriek rang out from a very spacious area. Along with the echo, it rushed into everyone's senses. Layers upon layers of brilliant white energy waves erupted from the Abyss Death Mist. Before the two groups of manifestations that were charging endlessly toward them had even started fighting, they had already lost a portion of them. A large area of the Abyss Death Mist in front of them had been dug out by the energy waves of order. The void instantly became much cleaner. Phew! Jing Yuanji breathed a sigh of relief after she sensed Lord Feng's aura. She had been worried when she could not see Lord Feng just now. Don't let your guard down. The manifestations may charge out from places we did not expect. Maintain order and rules to suppress this void region. Jing Yuanji also loudly commanded the warriors of the heavenly realm. Her gaze was solemn as she sized up this void region. Even if the enemies were always appearing before their eyes, there might still be fatal dangers hidden in some places that they could not see or notice. This battle was not something that could be judged with one's eyes from the very beginning. Chapter 1474. Abyssal Death Fog. The first thing that entered his eyes was a chaotic darkness. The red patterns were like lightning that was released from the clouds. They would occasionally flash before his eyes, appearing in an instant and disappearing in an instant. Then, they would appear in an even further place. The red light illuminated the blurry appearance of the fog. It didn't seem to be much different from ordinary clouds. However, this place was filled with a chaotic aura that made him feel uncomfortable. This was something that the world of order couldn't replicate. Yin Nuoxing strolled in the clouds, releasing a large amount of order energy from his body from time to time. It had been 10 minutes since he entered the forbidden land of order and unleashed the order of nothingness. He could feel that the abyssal death shroud was mobilizing a large amount of energy to deal with him. It was using at least 10 different ways to suppress him. However, it was not very effective. At this moment, there were 23 types of origin energy circulating in his body. The abyssal death shroud alone could not hurt him. Even so, the abyssal death shroud was mobilizing more energy to deal with the uninvited guest. It maximized the influence of the energy and the power of the chaotic energy. It did not even give birth to any more manifestations. It was using pure energy to wear him down. Just as he had estimated, this part of the abyssal death shroud could not affect him in any way. Yin Nuoxing was also happy to wander in the forbidden land of order. He was looking for something. One should be the new core of the abyssal death shroud, and the other. He did not know what he was looking for. He was just trying his luck in this place, hoping to find something that could make him discover something new. But now, it seemed that he did not find anything. If he continued to wander aimlessly, he would have wasted half an hour here. Yin Nuoxing waved his hand and threw out a dozen long swords that were condensed from order energy. They scattered and rushed into the abyssal death mist, cutting through the nearby clouds and clearing out a clean area. The long sword scattered and stopped at various places. Then, as he raised the nether void sword, they all floated up a little and stabbed into the space below. Buzz! More than a dozen nihility order origin erupted at the same time, creating a tsunami in the abyssal death mist. It was as if more than a dozen seas were crashing into each other. The energy from the collision of order energy exploded with a huge destructive force, digging out more than a dozen huge holes in the abyssal death mist. The already shocking scene became even more terrifying. The red energy circulating in the black mist dimmed and disappeared, and the area quieted down. Yin Nuoxing unsheathed the nether void sword and casually swung it a few times. He examined the scene before him and couldn't help but wonder if he had gone overboard in his destruction. Just a moment ago, this place had seemed like a sealed space filled with people who wanted to kill him. But now he felt like he was in a vast and boundless space. There were no signs of chaos at all. Even though the abyssal death mist was still there, it had been destroyed to the point where an energy hole had appeared. It couldn't affect him at all. In fact, there was still a lot of order energy that hadn't dissipated yet. When the two types of energy came into contact with each other in the distance, some small-scale energy explosions occurred and caused some energy anomalies. This is great. Even if there was something here, it should have been destroyed completely. Yin Nuoxing sighed. Before he attacked, he did feel some special consciousnesses and wills staring at him. Those weren't the consciousnesses and wills of the underworld people. They weren't the consciousnesses and wills of the living people. They were probably the so-called cores. He just wanted to use a little attack to draw them out. The more origin energy I control, the harder it is to control my own energy. It seems that I need some time to get used to it again. Yin Nuoxing sensed his own situation and sighed inwardly. Even if his attainments in energy were so high that he was comparable to the primeval god, the origin energy wasn't something that could be easily controlled. Every time he controlled a new origin energy, there would be some disturbances in the origin energy that he had completely controlled. He needed to strengthen his control over the two groups again. Every time he perfectly controlled a new origin energy, he felt that he had been sublimated again. If he continued to sublimate, he would directly be annihilated into ashes. The abyssal death shroud was a very long and thick wall. It was quite difficult to cut a hole directly through the wall. It would consume a lot of the power of rules and order. He needed to completely wipe out the abyssal death shroud in this area of the void from the rules. But he just said that he didn't come here alone to deal with the abyssal death shroud in this area of the void. He only attacked once or twice to force out some consciousnesses and wills hidden behind. But if he were to wreak havoc, it would inevitably attract the attention of the underworld people. Now is not a very good time to start a war. He had to at least wait until he was almost fully recovered before he could start thinking about this. Now, it was better to investigate the changes in the abyssal death shroud. 2 hours later, it was about 2 hours. Yin Nuoxing couldn't be sure. He didn't have any concept of time in the void to begin with. There was no limit. Now that he was still in this abyssal death shroud that had no order or normal rules to speak of, he couldn't accurately sense the flow of time. Based on his biological clock, his energy clock, it should be about 2 hours. In the past 2 hours, Yin Nuoxing had sensed multiple consciousnesses and individual consciousnesses locking onto him. However, he could not find the source at all. This place was like a mother's womb to the manifestations. It was the original territory of their own territory, so they might not be stronger than him or have an advantage over him. However, it was also very difficult for him to find them and drag them out. It was still very easy for him to simply kill them. He had already killed countless of them on his way here. There were at least 100 of those individual consciousnesses that had died here. They had hidden themselves very well and could not be dragged out. After wandering around to this extent and still not finding anything, Yin Nuoxing gradually lost his patience. He stopped and touched Huey's soul seed. Hui, have you found any commander individuals similar to the core on your side? Huey's voice came from his soul after a few seconds. Core individual? Well, I didn't pay much attention to it. Did you notice that the abyssal death mist manifestation was acting a little strange this time? Could it be caused by the existence of the core and individual commanders that you mentioned? Most likely. I have sensed the existence of many consciousnesses and consciousnesses here. However, if I want to drag them out, it's a little difficult. I can only kill them. If I want to drag them out, I reckon that only the primeval god can do that, Yin Nuoxing replied. If you can't drag them out, then so be it. Just beat them. Wait, Feng, where are you? You said that you sense here. Don't tell me that you. Hui subconsciously replied before he suddenly sensed that something was wrong. His face immediately darkened. I'm inside the abyssal death mist. Yin Nuoxing threw out the words without any concealment. Hui and the others who were listening at the side were all thunderstruck by this answer. Their expressions changed greatly. If they could, they wished that they could cross the void right now and ask him what he was trying to do. F***CK. You. Don't F***CK. It's nothing. I'm not risking my life. I'm not going crazy. The situation is good. The manifestations are all hiding and not coming out. Yin Nuoxing stuffed Huey's mouth with a few answers when he started screaming. Everyone who was listening at the side was stunned for a moment before they imperceptibly heaved a sigh of relief. Hui was a little stunned by being stuffed. After a moment, he came back to his senses and said, Then how did you contact me? In the abyssal death mist. Logically speaking, we are separated by the abyssal death mist. Feng, you shouldn't be able to talk nonsense with me. About this. Yin Nuoxing turned around and looked behind him. A huge, extremely huge tunnel had been dug out from the abyssal death mist that was like black clouds and accompanied by red energy lightning. This tunnel led to the normal void. The abyssal death mist had not closed up. It was unknown whether it was because it only needed energy to suppress its healing, or because it simply did not intend to heal and left it open like this. To put it simply, I've dug a path out of the abyssal death mist, and am still wandering around inside. Hui was silent for a long time. So this was what he meant by nothing. Although from his tone of voice, he did not seem to have gone crazy and was in a normal state, the fact that he went into the abyssal death mist itself was very problematic. It seemed that the chains on the hands of the girls who stayed with him were not heavy enough to restrain this guy. I'll give it to you. Hui sighed. After a brief conversation, he skipped the topic. Someone who was in the death mist of the abyss was not here to chat with him. Indeed, we haven't seen the conscious individuals in the manifestations yet. But since you've mentioned it, we'll keep an eye out. The problem is, what if they don't come out? Are we going to fight our way in? That won't be necessary. I'm just here to scout. Yin Nuashing waved her hand and continued to move deeper into the abyssal death mist. All right, I'm just telling you to pay more attention. After all, the abyssal death mist this time is indeed different from the last time. If you guys are not careful, you might fail miserably. Well, let's do our best. Call me if there's anything. If you can't win, call for help. It's not like I can't cross half the void to save you guys. Maple's voice suddenly disappeared, leaving Hui dumbfounded. Aside from the last sentence that sounded a little awkward, the rest of the conversation was really Maple's style. He probably would not have any major problems for the time being, so Hui and the others could do a little work here. What a troublesome fellow. Hui let out a long sigh and looked into the city from the top of the wall. His figure disappeared from the wall and headed towards the battlefield outside the city. I Ching, who was commanding the battle, was shocked. Little Ching, is there anything out of the ordinary? I Ching was stunned for a moment and immediately thought of what Lord Maple said. But unfortunately, he did not find anything. No, the battle is still going on as usual. I don't know why, but the abyssal death mist fighting spirit is not that intense. It seems like they just want to take the opportunity to move their position and shrink their encirclement. After that, they did not do anything else, and we were shocked by their actions and quickly regrouped. That's why we restarted the battle in this faraway place. I just feel that this inexplicable battle doesn't seem like the underworld. It doesn't seem like there's someone commanding behind the scenes. Huey's face twitched as he heard I Ching's words. After thinking for a while, he understood I Ching's thoughts. And if what I Ching said was true, this would probably be the most serious mistake in the entire void. To put it simply, the abyssal death mist saw that there was a problem with the World of Order's defense line. At first glance, they felt that it was a good idea. They had not moved for thousands of years. Now that there was a good opportunity, of course, they quickly lifted their heads and moved themselves to a new position or something. The people of the World of Order were nervous. How could this work? The Middle Realm was already in danger. Now that the abyssal death mist had caused such a ruckus, they could not wait any longer and finally wanted to start the battle. So they all gathered at the front line of the void, bringing with them enough killing intent and fighting spirit to collapse the void. And when the abyssal death mist saw that the World of Order had lost their minds like a hornet's nest that had been poked, they quickly gathered their energy and prepared for a counterattack. The abyssal death mist and the abyssal death mist that had something wrong with their minds certainly did not understand the meaning behind this. They just wanted to move their nest. Then, the abyssal death mist and the thousands of champions of the World of Order coincidentally met, and the two groups smashed each other's heads open on the spot. And throughout the whole process, other than a group of frightened birds in the World of Order who were provoked by the abyssal death mist, the people of the underworld said that they did not know anything and were still plotting their own schemes in the middle and lower realms. We suddenly felt that this was not impossible, but I think that the possibility of this sudden attack, the reason is a little too far-fetched. Even if there were suddenly many individuals with consciousness and will in the abyssal death mist, according to Hui, they are not particularly strong. They can't rely on their vague and shallow consciousness to control the entire abyssal death mist to move forward. It could only be that someone from the underworld gave them a push from behind to cause such a large-scale advance. And Lil Ching, I've finished processing your information. The distorted race and the abyssal death mist had broken through the void blockade by a full day and a half's time. If they really sensed that the timing was right, they would have launched an all-out attack after the vast sky collapsed the void blockade. Why would they need to wait for that a day and a half of void time? I Ching scratched his head. This did not make sense. But then he thought of another reason. Let's say that this is indeed the intention of the underworld. But what if this order existed 1,000 years ago? And those individuals with consciousness that evolved in the past 1,000 years only judged. Because of what? They judged that the need at this moment is to advance. I understand what you mean. Huey's expression changed slightly. After a while, he regained his solemn expression. This time, he suddenly found Yin Nuoxing's soul seed. Foam! Something might have happened in the world of order. Yin Nuoxing, who had turned into a demolition team on a killing spree in the abyssal death mist, was suddenly stunned. The netherworld ruins, sword in his hand, paused for a moment. What do you mean? He threw the content of the conversation to Yin Nuoxing. After listening to it, his expression also changed. A name that had been buried for a while suddenly jumped out from his mouth. The core of the primordial realm. That altar has been discovered. From her previous deduction, the group of people from the underworld was very likely to be looking for the core of the primordial realm. The core of the primordial realm of the 8 primordial realms was once kept in that altar world. Now that world was sealed, but the consciousness of the altar came out and looked for the lost core of the 8 primordial realms in the void. Could it be that the altar had been discovered? Lady Green, Little Green, mobilized some people to look for the altar mentioned before in the world of order. The focus is not on the altar itself, but on the aura. Yuan Ji, find some people to search the world of order. In the middle plane, something might have gone wrong. They might not be fighting passively. They might just be stalling for time, or their minds might not be here at all. Track the energy flow of the abyssal death mist. Find the spearhead that they use to explore the world of order. Find that place. The two of them gave the order together. Yin Nuoxing glanced at the vast abyssal death mist and suddenly frowned. He turned around and left along the passage at full speed. However, the abyssal death mist that had been lazy and unwilling to move suddenly became violent at this moment. The abyssal death mist in front of them suddenly wriggled rapidly and crazily grew to close the passage. Get lost. Yin Nuoxing waved his hand and threw out dozens of order longswords. He raised the netherworld ruin sword and stabbed it into the void. The wild order energy was like dozens of mythical behemoths roaring at the same time. The energy that shook the void resonated with the origin energy and suddenly bloomed in this place. Millions of energy swords pulled up a bright white river of stars and swept across the abyssal death mist, piercing a bigger hole in the already messy abyssal death mist that had yet to recover. Roar! 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 The roar that shook the abyssal death shroud was accompanied by the shrill sound of energy. Yin Nuoxing could see from the corner of his eyes that there were some colossal bodies emerging from the depths of the abyssal death shroud, and half of them were instantly destroyed by dozens of order energy blasts. He had thought that the roar was of rage, and now that he heard it, it sounded more like the roar of an injured beast. The colossal body stretched its huge body to block the energy blasts and the sword flashes that were rushing towards it in all directions, as if using its own body to withstand the attack and prevent the abyssal death shroud from suffering greater damage. Narrowing his eyes at the scene, Yin Nuoxing pulled out the netherworld ruin sword and looked at the huge body that was riddled with holes. He frowned slightly. It was not protecting the abyssal death mist itself. It was protecting the space behind it. The place where it appeared was extremely deep, and the shock wave of order energy would affect that place. However, in the abyssal death mist, the attack range was much smaller and would not cause a destructive blow to that place. It could only be protecting something. Forget it. I don't have much strength left. My body might collapse for a while if I do that again. Let's talk about it next time. Yin Nuoxing clenched his fist. His hand that was holding the netherworld ruin sword trembled a little. He grunted unhappily and looked back. Then, he rushed toward the exit. This time, the abyssal death mist that had sensed his intention to seal him in here could not seal the exit in such a short time. With a small part of the abyssal death mist wrapped around his body, Yin Nuoxing swung his sword to get rid of the energy mist that was wrapped around his body. He glanced at the abyssal death mist that was chasing after him, trying to keep him here. A large number of strange and huge ferocious ghost hands reached out and surrounded him from all directions. Yin Nuoxing was a little taken aback when he saw its frenzied momentum. The netherworld ruin sword flashed a cold light before his eyes, shattering all the ghostly hands that were chasing after him and the manifestations that were trying to rush out before they could form. Feeling his hand tremble again, Yun Nuashing quickly shouted in his soul, "Help! Give me a hand!" In the area where the intense battle was going on in the distance, a crimson-pink energy flame suddenly exploded. The crimson-pink sea of fire spread out along the void and burned a large part of the void. A figure covered in flames came from the front and instantly came to Yun Nuashing's side. Without saying a word, the figure grabbed him and ran away. Yun Nuashing, "No, I'm not that seriously injured. Forget it." After retreating to the place where the battle was going on, the young man quickly turned back to look at him. Seeing that he was fine and just a little weak, he let out a sigh of relief. "How is it? Did you find anything? Some of your people suddenly left." "We don't know what happened, and we don't dare to ask. There's something going on." Yun Nuashing nodded in response. He looked at the battle that was still going on here, as well as the abyssal death mist that was obviously still paying attention to him. It seemed like they were still planning to fight a few million rounds with him. The sudden battle intent that appeared made him speechless. They were really crazy at any time. Just a moment ago, they didn't really want to fight, but now they were full of unyielding and determination to destroy everything. He really didn't know what those consciousnesses were thinking. Didn't he just destroy a part of his home? He didn't even destroy the foundation. Was there a need to be so agitated? Anyway, let's retreat first. Whether it was a mistake or not, he would talk about it later. He still said the same thing. It didn't matter if this battle came sooner or later. Chapter 1475. The hasty battle with the Abyssal Death Shroud also ended in haste. The Abyssal Death Shroud, which had an inexplicable obsession with Yun Nuashing, who had escaped from their territory, and a large group of manifestations pursued them relentlessly for a distance. It was only when Yun Nuashing and the others returned to the Void Seal that they stopped. They bared their teeth and roared outside the Void Seal for a long time before slowly dispersing. They looked like a group of hooligans who had failed to win a brawl and left with a belly full of resentment after confronting and shouting for a while. The small battle against the Abyssal Death Shroud did not last long, and there were no casualties since it was an army that had been mobilized. The youth reorganized the army that had returned to the city and arranged some follow-up matters before looking for Yun Nuashing. The latter and the others seemed to be discussing something and turned their attention when they saw him. "You've come at the right time. We were just talking about something that might require you to send some men to search. We don't have enough men at the moment." The youth was choked by Yun Nuashing's words as soon as he entered, forgetting all the lines he had prepared before he came in. His mouth twitched for a while before he simply threw away the words he had just said. "Fine. As expected, you've triggered the plot crazily as soon as you arrived. Tell me, what do you want me to do?" Yun Nuashing moved aside, revealing a pure dark space behind her. The youth would not have been able to see it if she did not move aside. It was the void, and a huge white circle surrounded half of the dark zone. That was the void front line they were guarding, while the other half was naturally the territory of the Abyssal Death Shroud that belonged to the underworld. "Look for a place in this entire area." Yun Nuashing pointed at the white circle and drew a circle with her finger. "A region that has been attacked by the Abyssal Death Shroud, or is already infiltrated. You're not asking us to search the entire void front line, are you?" The youth's eyes widened in shock. Who could withstand such a huge area? Yun Nuashing rolled her eyes. "Of course not. There are others guarding the other void zones, and I've already made the arrangements. I want you to help find our void zone. It could be a big or small matter, and it might be related to the reason why this war suddenly broke out." "Reason?" The youth muttered inwardly and scratched his head in confusion. Was it not because the Abyssal Death Shroud took advantage of the collapse of the previous void frontline? Well, seeing Yun Nuashing staring blankly into the void, the youth felt that there might be another reason, although he could not understand it. "Fine. I won't ask the reason since you're so anxious," he said, but he could not understand. "Well." At those words, the youth turned and headed back to where he came from, leaving less than a minute later. He was not worried about anything, For even if everyone else in the void began to scheme and scheme, the person before him would not change. It was not that he believed the observer to be noble or selfless, but that he simply could not be bothered to scheme or scheme. He was straightforward and never spoke nonsense. At least, that was what he understood from various aspects. The observer was more purposeful than other heavenly gods, and would fight for whatever reason he came to the void frontline without any second thoughts. It was said that the observer was so angry that he no longer set foot in the void frontline of the previous generation, that he no longer set foot in that place. We'll be guarding this place for the time being. With me here, there's no need to worry about the defensive line. Instead, you have to help me find that region. Yun Nuoxing's voice wafted into the youth's mind from behind, and the latter waved her hand without turning back. Don't worry, fighting and whatnot won't be as violent as you. Fortunately, we have enough people, and finding a place is just a matter of minutes. You just stand guard here for me and wait for the good news from behind. Watching, there seem to be a lot of cases of people watching people leave recently. Either way, after watching the youth personally lead the others into the void to another void domain, Yun Nuoxing also confirmed the situation with the others in the other regions of the void. At present, progress was a little slow. The void frontline had just been re-established not too long ago, and the entire realm had just fought a great battle against the abyssal death shroud. If they were to transfer people to other places, they would not be able to spare many people even if they were to act as patrols. She wanted to use the power of divine destruction to sense the situation, but she was afraid that it would not be fun if the abyssal death shroud suddenly attacked the sealing circle of the void without anyone coming. It was better not to do those weird things in such a tense time, so as to not cause a blow to the morale of the warriors in the world of order. The world of order was still too fragile now, and could not suffer any more provocation. Although Yun Nuoxing was a little anxious, she could only suppress it and wait slowly. Now, nothing could be rushed, and nothing could be rushed. If she was not anxious, then she must be lying to herself. The core of the primordial realm, it was not something that could be touched casually. If the altar's consciousness really found the thing that she had been guarding for countless years, and it was discovered by the people of the underworld, it would be fun if they did not do a good job of snatching it away. The pattern of the void would fall into the hands of the underworld, and no one would be able to stop those idiots. No matter how anxious I am, I can only wait patiently. I trust them, and I can only trust them now. Yun Nuoxing said calmly. Siyu heard this and sighed deeply. She walked forward and took the teacup that spilled all the tea and put it aside. You don't look calm at all now. Am I? I don't think so, Yun Nuoxing muttered. He got up and put his hand on the door. Just as he was about to open the door, the two doors in front of him collapsed with a loud bang. He was stunned. Feng Qingwang looked up from the book and sighed. You have opened the door more than 100 times in the past hour. You just broke it 2 minutes ago. Although you put it back, that door no longer has the function it should have. She closed the book in her hand and walked forward to help him put the door back in place. She held his hand and pressed him on the sofa. How about you calm down first? You are so distracted. You will go crazy before you get any news. Yun Nuoxing sighed. All right, Yun Nuoxing was actually quite nervous. He was so nervous that he was a little irritable. Everything that started with this incident would lead to an extremely bad ending. According to his calculations, there was a 99% chance that it would lead to the ending of that dream or an even worse ending. Then, all his efforts to forcefully correct history would be in vain. He knew that this was just a dream called reality. He was now stubborn and stubborn. He wanted to do something. Even though he knew that some things were destined to happen in the 139th era and could not be changed, he still did not want this dream to end like that. He did not want to see that kind of ending. So, it would be strange if he was not nervous. If his body had not recovered to its perfect state and could not withstand his own torment, he would have already charged into the death mist of the abyss and started a massacre. He would have attracted all the minions in the void. Half of the champions at the front line of the void were quickly mobilized. They searched the void of the realm of order, the void close to the front line of the void, and the middle realm. They used all the methods they knew to find that inconspicuous point. At the same time, we also mentioned a lot of possible methods to search for that insignificant point in the void. For example, they could shout in the void, send a signal, or two images. Yin Nuashing thought for a moment. It was indeed feasible. The two images were of them and the consciousness of the altar in the background. As long as they could notify that unreliable consciousness, she should be able to contact them. When they left, they had exchanged their breaths. They would not be able to find that fellow. However, the consciousness of the altar said that she had a way to find them. Let's just take it as the truth. And I'm going to shout. We squeaked in the soul seed. He also squeaked to the people in the void. It's impossible to find that little girl now. However, it's still possible to get her to inform us to look for her. If we delay any longer, who knows what will happen? Anyway, you have the final say. If you say shout, I'll shout it out in the next second. Through Qing Jun, Jing Yuanji, and the others at the front line of the void, we can cover the entire middle realm and the edge of the void seal. Yin Nuashing muttered, but won't others see it? First, there's no way to avoid it. If we use an energy seal, we need a strand of her energy as a primer. Otherwise, she won't know what happened when the information flood passed by. We can't just shout something that no one can understand into the void, right? Hui spread his hands helplessly. Don't worry. The energy level is higher, and I even used your power of divine destruction. There's no way to completely avoid it. However, only a very small number of people would know what was said in the information flood. It's embarrassing. Hey, there are probably a lot of people in the void who know our names. However, not many people know about us. Who knows who the two silly people in the images that suddenly flashed in my mind are? We waved his hand nonchalantly. Yin Nuashing. He still felt very ashamed. He shouted towards the void with a high-definition image of the two of them and the consciousness of the altar. No matter how he looked at it, it looked like a public execution. Shout all you want. Hurry up and shout. No one knows me anyway. Siyu and Feng Qingwang looked at each other and shrugged. They had even shouted their faces. Even if they didn't know who they were now, they might still see them in the future. This time, they would be famous in the void. We responded happily. After a few seconds of silence, Yin Nuashing sat on the sofa with a depressed and conflicted face. After waiting for a while, she suddenly felt a wave passing by the void. Siyu and Feng Qingwang both looked up. That wave, probably because they knew about Yin Nuashing's aura, they also got some information from the information flood. It was a picture. It was exactly the same as what he showed them. It seemed that the Guardian didn't do anything. The information flood has passed by. Feng Qingwang said softly. There should be a result soon, right? Hearing this, Yin Nuashing raised his head and looked at her with a conflicted expression. The little girl was stunned. This expression contained at least 10 different emotions. She really didn't know how he could make such a difficult and comical expression. It would be great if it was that simple. Yin Nuashing sighed again, feeling that he might have aged a few 100,000 years. The information torrent was something that they could execute immediately and get results immediately. Or maybe there would be results, as other means would take too long. The thing that they could not afford to waste the most now was the world. In fact, in order to shout to the entire void, to ensure that the information torrent was not eroded and blurred by the power of the void, they needed to do a lot of detailed adjustments. Without some prearranged means, they needed to use another means. Now, they were using the soldiers of the celestial realm all over the front line of the void as energy nodes to spread out. Generally speaking, it was quite complicated. Even if they had reached the Yuanshe realm, they could not do something that could startle the entire void with one shout. That was just a fantasy, and no one could do it. It's done. The expected result should be better than expected. Right now, the information torrent should have passed through the middle plane that is under the control of the world of order. If that little brat is indeed within this range, then she should have received the news, probably. Hearing Huey's words, Yin Nuashing stood up and sighed again. Suddenly, he thought of something and his face twitched. Hey, what if she's trapped by the death mist in the abyss? Hui was stunned as well. They were too anxious to think of such a problem. You, this, then we might have shouted for nothing, but should be fine. The void seal is intact. It will only break once. This time, we have used many methods to limit the void seal and strengthen the defense. It stands at the level of order and maintains absolute integrity. Even a nether void sword can't tear a hole in the void seal while it is still intact. So, maybe that kind of thing won't happen. Let's hope so. Yin Nuashing sighed and scratched his head hard. He felt that he was a little bald recently. The things that he was busy with were too troublesome. There was silence in the soul communication. It was not good to interrupt the serious conversation between the two lords. At this moment, the silence was even more frightening. Hui heard Yin Nuashing sighing in the soul communication. He could not help but smile bitterly. Buddy, calm down. It's useless for you to be anxious now. We have done what we can in a short time. The rest is up to fate and luck. Whether the little girl will respond. You and I both know the probability. Luck, ha! Yin Nuashing sneered and sat down hard on the sofa. What an annoying word. The probability is always 50-50. I can only hope that that person still exists in the world of order. If we find her and find that she's fine, although it will overturn our previous guess, it's still better than her being caught by the death mist of the abyss. In short, they were now in a state where they could not find her alive or dead. It made them anxious and angry. Sometimes, it was safer to keep something under one's nose. When she left alone and said that she was looking for the core of the 8 elemental realms, they did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. However, when the death mist in the abyss suddenly moved, they remembered that there was something wrong. If they had known, they would have left an accurate mark in her consciousness. Then they would not have to sit here and frown. So the only thing he could do now was to wait and leave everything to that bullshit luck. Talking about luck in the void was just bullshit. Also, he had to prepare for battle. Right now, the Yunua planet had already prepared a dozen large-scale, long-distance teleportation circles. He just had to jump over the instant he found the little girl. If he encountered the abyssal death mist, he would beat it up so badly that even its creator couldn't recognize it. Then, it would be an even longer period of waiting. Yin Nuashing's mind replayed his deduction repeatedly. The result was no different. Find the girl, be safe. Then be safe. Find the girl, be safe. Then be safe. Don't find the girl, be the thing taken away. The structure of the void fell into the control of the underworld. The war would expand without limit. Basically, it was a bad ending. Also, find the girl, and then go to save her. This situation was very likely to fall into the 2 above results. He found something to do with his deduction. However, most of the time, he was deducing the second result. If the core of the 8 elemental realms really fell into the underworld's hands, how should they fight in the future? He had deduced this matter 14 trillion times, and only one answer came out: the fall of the world of order. He could not deduce even one chance to change the situation to another ending. Buddy, our soul message is full of messy information that you have deduced. You should take a break. Huey's voice suddenly rang in Yun Nuashing's mind. Startled, he quickly looked up and saw Yu and Feng Qinghuang's dizzy faces. He was stunned for a moment. My deduction results are all in the soul message. Hui smiled bitterly when he heard that. Well, this guy didn't even know how far his mind had wandered. However, thanks to his actions, the warriors of the celestial realm who were scattered all over the void were aware of the seriousness of the situation this time. They were all using their own methods to continue searching in the void. According to the celestial realm's time, it had been a day since the first information flood. This was also the void time of the Sea of Time. If it was not in the world of light, this void time was meaningless. To put it more clearly, this was the time of the origin world. During the day of waiting, Yin Nuashing himself sent the information flood again. This time, he was going all out. He did not care if it was embarrassing or not. Everyone could receive the information flood that crossed the front line of the void. However, as we said, most people were a little confused by the image that suddenly popped up in their minds. They had no idea what was going on. Among the trillions of lives, Only those who had seen Yin Nuoxing and Feng Qing Wang reacted a little. They also noticed the seriousness of the situation and began to lead their own people to search. The main reason was that the death mist and the abyss were in a standoff. There was not much movement. It was unlikely that a fight would break out anytime soon. Therefore, they could only wait at the front line. The long wait made Yin Nuoxing so anxious that he could not help but want to rush out himself. Suddenly, a message rushed out from his soul. Lord Maple, I have found the place where the death mist is gathering on a large scale. There is a weak presence of order coming from there. Identify the presence. It's the presence of that altar. The sudden message made Yin Nuoxing stand up abruptly. He found the soul seed of the person who sent the message and found his location. In the next second, a dozen magic circles appeared on his body, and he was about to teleport himself over. Siyu and Feng Qing Wang, who were sitting quietly on the side, saw the sudden movement. They quickly stood up and rushed toward Yin Nuoxing. Just as they were about to be teleported away, they bumped into Yin Nuoxing and were teleported away together. I Ching, you guard the teleportation array. I'll go too. According to the information, it seems to be the third scenario. Maple's condition is not good. I have to go help. Hui said to I Ching. He stepped into the teleportation array and disappeared. Lord Hui brought some people and left. I Ching was about to ask him to bring some people over. Before he could finish his sentence, he had already disappeared. He could not help but smile bitterly. He could only pray that everything was going well. With the soul seed and the location of the soul transmission, as long as they were not in the death mist of the abyss, it was not difficult to know where the other party was. Yin Nuoxing and the others went through several rapid teleportations. They transitioned from blurry teleportations to precise teleportations. They arrived at their destination after 1 minute. In front of them was an extremely bright void region. In front of them was a world of light. It was floating alone in the void. There was only one world of light in the surroundings. It was very bright, like a lonely star in the starry sky. It seemed to be slightly bigger than an ordinary source world. Lord Maple, Lord Hui, Yin Nuoxing, and the others arrived at their destination at the same time. The person who found the destination was shocked. He did not expect the two lords to arrive so quickly. He quickly pointed in front. An extremely large amount of death mist of the abyss is coming from that world of light. At the same time, there is the presence of that altar. Why is it like this again? What the hell did that little girl do? What the hell is going on? We could not help but complain. Just as he looked ahead, he was stunned and his eyes widened. The world of light in front of him had been split into two by the void sealing circle. Half of it was shrouded in the sealing circle, and the other half was exposed outside the sealing circle. Outside the sealing circle was all the death mist of the abyss. With the world of light that was not shrouded in the sealing circle as the center, the death mist of the abyss looked like a huge black vortex gushing into the world of light. From time to time, there were dark red energy lightning streaking across the sky. It was a sight to behold. How could this happen to an order-class sealing circle? Yin Nuoxing frowned. It should have been fished in by the sealing circle. Hui took a step or two forward and reached out to touch the world barrier. He pondered for a moment. Then there's only one possibility. When the new sealing circle was opened, it was in the middle of the battle between order and chaos. The void sealing circle could not determine whether it belonged to order or chaos, so it split it into two. The same thing is probably happening inside the world of light. In any case, this was a rare sight. A world of light that had both order and chaos appeared at the same time. It was hard to imagine how intense the battle between the two forces inside the world of light was for the world of light to be in such a state. Chapter 1476. Hui circled around the world barrier that was protected by order. After Yin Nuoxing urged him a few times, he finally stopped and said, "There's no problem. The entire world light, including the world barrier, has been separated by the two forces of order. This half of the world barrier that is controlled by order has already fused with the void seal. The death mist from the abyss will not be able to enter. but I can't tell what's going on inside. I suggest that the two of us go in and take a look, just in case something unexpected happens." We thought about it and said very seriously. Nuashi nodded and looked at Siyu and Hui. "You two wait here for a while." After that, she looked at the Celestial Realm warriors who had discovered this place and said, "Seal this void domain. Dig this void domain out from the void. It must be the kind that can sink into the void domain at any time, just in case something bad happens." Siyu looked at him as if he was ready to sacrifice everything for the world of order. Her face trembled a little, and she reminded him worriedly, "Be careful. Your body hasn't fully recovered yet, so don't be too reckless. Don't always rush forward without caring about anything. Don't always use peerless to rush forward. Brother Hui, I'll have to trouble you to look after him. Don't hold him back." In the face of Siyu's nagging, Nuashi nodded and listened very seriously. Hui had a meaningful smile on his face. He had an expression of this day has finally come. He knew that his buddy was just pretending to listen very seriously. In fact, his mind had already flown to God knows where. All right. If we continue talking, we'll really be wasting time." We found the right time to interrupt the topic. He quickly pulled Nuashi forward. He turned back and smiled at Siyu. "Don't worry. I'll take good care of your little star." The two of them went into the world barrier and disappeared into the void in an instant. After a short period of time, Hui and Nuashi opened their eyes. What they saw was a lonely burning blue star hanging in the starry sky. They had entered the world light cluster. Nuashi reached out to pick his ears and breathed a sigh of relief. Hui noticed his action and laughed sinisterly. "Tsk, you finally have this day. How does it feel to be stared at and disciplined by others?" "Nothing. You don't really think that I need to be disciplined, do you?" Nuashi pursed his lips. He had lived for so long and still did not know what to do and what not to do. Moreover, it was not the first time that he had heard Xian and the others say these things in the 139th era. He just wanted them to relax a little and not be so nervous. That was why he pretended to be very serious. We thought about it seriously and snapped his fingers. "Actually, I really think that you need someone to keep you in check. Siyu is right. Every time you do whatever you want, you do whatever you want. You're not afraid of anything. Who knows if you'll really cause some big trouble that neither of us can handle. The probability of that happening is very small, but looking at the entire void, it's hard to say." Nuashi wanted to refute when he heard the first part of Huey's words. However, when he heard the second part, he was stunned. His whole body stiffened. It was as if he was recalling the events of the ancient era. At that time, he was just running around randomly and bumped into some unknown thing. Then he was pressed into the cycle of reincarnation and hunted down for countless years. Seeing Nuashi shivering unnaturally and unable to speak, Hui was also stunned. He reached out and pressed his hand on Nuashi's forehead. He muttered suspiciously, "You don't have a fever. Shouldn't you slap me at this time?" Nuashi shook his head and flung his hand away. He rolled his eyes at him. "I'm too lazy to talk, but if you talk a little more, I'll press you into the void of chaos and suppress you. You've said that many times, but I've never seen you do it." Hui laughed. Nuashi, there were many huge star clusters in the distant sky. They looked quite normal. Their shape, starlight, and other factors did not show any problems. This place should not be affected by the abyssal death shroud for the time being. However, there was nothing else in this space apart from those huge light clusters. There was no celestial body like the lone sun that they saw when they came in. It seemed that all the celestial bodies in this space were gathered in those huge star clusters, and the rest of the space was just a vast dead space. Now that you mention it, it seems to be the case. Hui heard Nuashi's whisper and began to pay attention to this space. There are no small clusters of galaxies, no small star systems, no wandering planets and stars. There are also no more energy-gathering reactions in the deep space. But judging from the rules and scale, this world is still quite young. By the way, there are not even ashes of galaxies and star clusters. It seems that this world has not experienced any decline event. Nuashi looked at those huge star clusters. When she got closer, she found that they were so huge that their light could illuminate half the sky. The light from these star clusters could be seen from the other side of the distant star system. When they first formed, they probably used up all the matter and energy absorbed, and even plundered energy from other places. Logically speaking, when they grew to a certain extent, they would reach a threshold and ignite the brightest fireworks in the sky. After that, they would clear a clean little nest for themselves and sit in this space. Ah, he was talking about quasars. That was the name of the star clusters when they first formed. Phone, I've observed something interesting. We suddenly stopped and pointed at the huge star clusters that were separated by an entire star system. It seems that the energy and matter of the entire star system, the entire world's light cluster, has been cleaned up by these star clusters. Not a single residue is left. The lonely sun we saw just now may have been thrown out by one of them. Perhaps there are other wandering stars in the sky, but their birthplaces are probably those star clusters. A large amount of matter and energy gathered, forming a collapsing phenomenon. Switch your perspective and use the power of the void to observe. Yin Nuashing tilted her head and tried to do the same. She grabbed a strand of energy from the void and let it flow into her eyes through her body. Then, she used her own way to deal with it and open her eyes. The scene in front of her changed, as if heaven and earth had been turned upside down. She saw a large amount of origin energy and the origin energy of the world with her eyes. They were flowing into the huge star clusters like a few whirlpools. It was as if 4 or 5 huge underwater holes had appeared in the sea, and the seawater was violently rushing into the holes that could never be filled. Yin Nuashing could not help but stop when she saw this abnormal phenomenon. She temporarily put the matter of the altar's consciousness aside. I've seen similar situations a few times, but I've never seen such a huge one. Did you see that the gathering points even affected the sea of time and the void? I saw it. Not only that, it also seems to have affected the barrier of the primordial realm. Hui nodded. I've never seen such a scene before. Do you want to go and take a look? Yin Nuashing subconsciously stepped forward, but she quickly came to her senses after a moment. She looked at Hui with a troubled expression and quickly shook her head. No, let's go and take a look later. Now, it's more important to deal with that matter first. She happens to be in this world as well. There's no hurry after we get her out. Speaking of which, where is she? This part of the sky is a little too quiet. There's no movement of the abyssal death shroud. Don't tell me we've fallen into some strange cognitive field again. Hui suddenly remembered what happened in the graveyard of gods and demons. He laughed dryly and scratched his head. Don't worry, let me take a look first. We might be inside the sealing circle, so it's normal that we can't sense the abyssal death shroud. But there's my energy in the sealing circle. Let me take a look. I found her. Hui rushed out with a whoosh. Yin Nuashing subconsciously followed. She looked back at the few star clusters and frowned slightly. She waved her hand and threw a wave of energy towards those star clusters. Only then did she feel at ease and followed Huey's footsteps. As they flew past a star region in the starry sky, Yin Nuashing turned back from time to time. He could still see the brilliance of a few star clusters behind him. The further he went, the clearer his vision became. The entire void, the entire world of order, was collapsing into a vortex in that place. Not only the matter of this world, but also the void and the space of the present world were being sucked into that huge vortex. It was as if a few giant beasts were crawling there, constantly devouring the entire primordial realm. Hey, snap out of it. Let's deal with the matter at hand first. You said it yourself. Hui patted the distracted Yin Nuashing and looked ahead. We've reached the boundary. Let's take a look. Yin Nuashing snapped out of it and looked ahead. The huge transparent void sealing circle appeared in the form of a vertical wall. Because it directly interfered with the interior of the world of light from the outside, the vertical wall was the same size as the world of light. Moreover, there was no so-called boundary. Just like the world fragment that smashed towards the face of the divine realm in the 139th era, it interfered with the interior of the world of light from the outside. Only by standing inside the world of light could one truly feel how grand and huge these things were, although the ceiling circle was also very majestic, looking from the void. Looking past the transparent ceiling circle, the chaotic darkness and red light drowned the other half of the sky. The black nebula was constantly bursting with deep and crazy red starlight, as if there was an eruption of the galaxy. The situation there was hell for mortals, and it was the deepest region, assuming that this world also gave birth to life. The diluted abyssal death shroud. It consumed a lot of energy when it broke through the world of light and forcibly split the order of this world of light. Now, the concentration and energy have decreased a lot, and it has gathered all the energy at the center. I can directly see that there is a very high energy reaction in the center of the abyssal death shroud. There is also a trace of the power of order mixed in. That's probably the little girl. Hui wiped his eyes and let his vision return to normal. He tilted his head and looked at Yin Nuoxing with a strange smile. So, what are you going to do? Fight your way in? Or do you want to take a look first? What's there to look at? Just fight your way in. Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes and was about to walk in, but Hui quickly grabbed her clothes and stopped her from walking. Then she heard him sigh helplessly. Your little girl asked me to keep an eye on you. It's only been half an hour since we parted, and you're already messing around again. You're not Qing Jun. Why do you also like to rush through the void? Yin Nuoxing thought seriously for a moment. Sometimes, Qing Jun's style of doing things is still very useful. Now he couldn't tell whether it was Qing Jun who affected him or he who affected Qing Jun. Then, while he was in a daze, Yin Nuoxing got rid of his weak control, walked out of the ceiling circle, opened the order barrier, and stepped into the area of the abyssal death shroud. Hey, forget it, wait for me. The two stepped into the territory of the abyssal death shroud together. Hui hurriedly took 2 steps to catch up with Yin Nuoxing's pace and walked in front of the ladder with a big shield. He hadn't fully recovered yet, and Hui didn't dare to let him continue to fight there. The black clouds were like a storm, and the deep red energy lightning was like thunder released from the dark clouds. What flashed past was the overflowing chaotic energy, which made the two of them feel a little repulsive. It was a little like a nauseating feeling. Walking in this black storm, except for the lightning that flashed from time to time, it was as quiet as a cave, a devil's den full of monsters. They clearly felt that there were some consciousnesses in this area, but they were all very quiet. Their attention was not on them. Those energies and consciousnesses were all concentrated in the depths of the abyssal death shroud, where there was something more worthy of their attention than the two of them. It's so quiet, I thought we were going to fight to the death after we came in. Hui Xianda whispered to Yin Nuoxing in his soul. His soul had been vigilant of the surrounding situation. Although there were very high-energy energies flashing around in the abyssal death shroud, those energies didn't have much effect on them. He was worried about alarming them only because of the abyssal death shroud. If they were to fight, the situation would inadvertently evolve to a troublesome extent, not to mention that Feng was still. The energy in this area has been shining all the time. They are concentrating all their energy to suppress the thing in the central area. Yin Nuoxing suddenly thought of a problem, and a black line hung down on her face. Why did that little girl meet us twice in the abyssal death shroud? Is she too attractive to the abyssal death shroud? Or is her luck not good recently? I think both are possible. Huey's cheeks twitched. They lurked quietly for the entire journey, and didn't use any means to hasten their journey. They walked on tiptoe. Yin Nuoxing even subconsciously shrank her head and bent her waist, while Hui wretchedly held up a shield and didn't look at the road ahead. After walking in this comical manner for about 2 hours, both of them felt that the order aura coming from the front suddenly became much stronger. The abyssal death shroud's activity here gradually intensified. They seemed to have entered the place where the two of them were confronting each other. The chaotic phenomenon caused by the confrontation between the order and non-order energies kept surging in the abyssal death shroud. That's it. The abyssal death shroud in the front is too active. It's impossible to hide. The surrounding abyssal death mist was like a pack of hungry wolves surrounding a piece of meat, constantly whittling away at the energy of the cluster of light, waiting for the day when they would devour it in one gulp. Suddenly, a huge commotion erupted from another region, startling the hungry beasts. They quickly turned their attention. Then, one after another, gigantic spawns began to form in the empty region. Strange and bizarre noises were being emitted from their mouths or other parts of their bodies as they began to lunge madly towards that direction. In the gray cluster of light, the little girl with long grayish-blue hair who was curled up into a ball suddenly opened her eyes. Those pair of grayish-blue eyes flashed with a trace of doubt. She slowly stood up, looking at the bright white order energy exploding in the abyssal death shroud like a storm, and could not help but be shocked for a moment. "It's them," she muttered to herself, and the words that stunned her for a moment. Not long ago, she seemed to have heard a very weak and vague voice, but she could not make out what it was at all. Now that she thought about it, that voice was a little familiar, and it seemed to be them. The little girl stared blankly for a moment, then suddenly laughed bitterly and sat down. "Really? You guys have found me even like this? Fortunately, I've held on until now, or else." A huge trembling sound of energy, and what seemed to be a scream, came from the front with the vibration of the order power. There was a cluster of golden light that was as fast as lightning, all the way through the layers of abyssal death shroud manifestations, and rushed into the little girl's line of sight. She was about to get up to greet it, but suddenly she realized that the golden light did not slow down at all, and was even crazily accelerating. Her little face instantly froze. Slow down. Don't crash into me." The head-on collision made the little girl feel that her consciousness was being shaken out. Just when she felt that she was going to be pushed into the chaotic void, she suddenly felt that she did not fly out at such a fast speed. Although she was indeed hit, it seemed that she was being pulled by someone. When she opened her eyes, she saw Huey's face was pale, holding a shield in one hand and her light cluster in the other. He hurriedly turned around, and millions of energy attacks emerged from the surrounding abyssal death shroud, and a large energy hand mixed in a group of energy storms wanted to catch them. Buzz! Those attacks did not get very close, and there was a bright white energy impact that tore through the void from afar, sweeping across the abyssal death shroud and shaking a large open area. Hui held the shield and desperately rushed back under the double pressure and hurriedly shouted at the top of his voice, "Found them! The wind is tight, retreat!" Boom! A bright white wave came head-on, and he and the little girl, along with the abyssal death shroud, were almost slapped into the void. Hui said, "Damn you, we're on the same side." Chapter 1477. We crawled forward against the firepower of the void, withstanding the simultaneous attacks from the energy of order and chaos. He hunched his back and brought the little girl forward. It was an understatement to say that he was in a hail of bullets. The indiscriminate attacks from both the enemy and his allies almost blasted his face black. Holding up the order barrier and rushing back desperately, we finally saw the figure who was casually pouring out energy in the abyssal death mist. He quickly shouted, "She's out. Stop fighting and let's go." Hui froze for a split second as he faced a chaotic energy that contained a berserk presence. In the next moment, he abruptly drew the sword of the Guardian and slashed out, tearing the massive energy into dozens of pieces. As he rescued the little girl, the abyssal death shroud focused all its attention on them, and he could also feel an even greater energy surging towards them from the void. The abyssal death shroud that stood tall in the void seemed to be moving as well, appearing to be in a state of anxiety. However, there was only a berserk effect on them. Hui raised his foot and kicked a manifestation that emerged from the abyssal death mist, dispersing it into its original pure energy form. Seeing that Yun Nuashing did not seem to care about him, Hui became anxious. Just as he was about to yell at Yun Nuashing, he suddenly realized that the latter's face had become much paler. The energy form of his body also showed signs of dimming, but he was still gritting his teeth and attacking the abyssal death mist with all his might. Only then did he realize that this fellow did not know any other tricks. His indomitable attack was to attract the attention of the abyssal death mist and buy time. At this moment, that fellow did not seem to be able to hear his voice. It also did not notice that they were not far away. No wonder this fellow was a little strange from the beginning. It turns out that he was still holding on. His soul and consciousness did not leave any free space, all focused on controlling the energy attack. We could not help but laugh bitterly. This fellow was really pushing himself to death as long as he was not dead. Damn it, when would he change? Well, now is not the time to think about this. Hui shook his head fiercely. The guardian's sword in his right hand disappeared. He picked up the guardian's shield and slammed it into the void. A circle of golden energy wave burst out with a bang, carrying an impact that could shatter the stars in all directions, stopping the attack of the abyssal death mist because of this blow. Noticing that the abyssal death mist had suddenly stopped attacking, Yun Nuoxing, who was gradually getting carried away, was also stunned. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly turned his head and saw a golden shadow rushing towards him from the front. In a flash, he felt that he was pulled by the collar and rushed out, and his vision changed 90 degrees vertically. Taking advantage of the momentary pause in the abyssal death mist attack, Hui hurriedly increased his speed to the limit. In a flash, he rushed out of the abyssal death mist domain and rushed into the range of the void seal. Bang! Boom! Before they could stand firm, there was a series of ruffians smashing the iron door behind them. As soon as Hui put down Yun Nuoxing and turned around, he saw an abyssal giant that was 100,000 miles tall standing in the starry sky behind him. It waved its fists madly at the barrier. In just a dozen seconds, it had smashed the void's seal tens of thousands of times, and the starry sky was filled with the afterimages of its arms waving. After struggling for more than 10 minutes without leaving a mark on the void's seal, the abyssal giant suddenly narrowed its eyes and stared at Yun Nuoxing and the other two behind the transparent barrier. Suddenly, it angrily smashed its fist on the seal. A moment later, its 100,000 miles tall figure began to collapse and gradually turned back into an ordinary cloud. The abyssal death mist also began to recede like a tide, gradually retreating a distance from the starry sky. However, it still lingered in this world and did not completely dissipate. It's finally over. Hui breathed a long sigh of relief. He glanced at the little girl standing next to him and could not help but ask, "What did you do to them? Or did they want to do something to you?" That abyssal death mist was filled with the aura of high-level origins. Before I went in, I didn't realize that it was a wolf's den. I was mentally prepared for this, but I didn't expect them to come so quickly. The little girl put her hands together and hid them in her sleeves. She calmly said, "After all, this is in this world, and they were the ones who discovered this place before me." Yun Nuoxing was stroking her hair. When she heard this, she turned around and looked at the starry sky of this world. Puzzled, she asked this world, "What's wrong with this world? Is there anything special about it?" "Special? Of course it's very special. I'm here to find the core of the primordial realm. You know this." The little girl's gaze swept across the starry sky in front of her. Her calm voice startled Yun Nuoxing and Yun Nuoxing. After all, this is the first batch of worlds born in the 8 primordial realm. It has survived the last great calamity and has yet to die out. The first batch of worlds. Huey's cheeks trembled. The first batch of worlds born in the 8 primordial realm. But I don't feel that there are too many abnormalities in this world. Oh, if those star clusters in the distance are considered abnormal, then it's the place that we discovered that is different from ordinary worlds. The little girl nodded. Every first batch of worlds born in the primordial realm is equivalent to a miniature version of the primordial realm itself. The star clusters you see are actually formed by the condensation of all the matter and energy of the entire world. Just like in the primordial realm, most of the energy and matter is concentrated in the upper plane. The upper plane occupies 70% of the void, and the rest is radiated to other places in the void. She waved her hand and gestured to the star clusters in front of them. It's just like what you see. Let's go over. Yin Nuashing nodded and reached out to pull her and Hui to fly into the distance. This world is the first batch of worlds born in the primordial realm. It reflects the state of the primordial realm when something happened. You want to trace the core of the primordial realm from the remaining information here? The little girl shook her head. To be exact, I found traces of the core of the primordial realm coming here. It had been here before, but it might have stayed for a short period of time. Yin Nuashing and Hui were stunned. The two of them said in unison, "Then where did it go now? Could have been captured by the underworld." The moment they thought of the consequences, the two of them felt a chill run down their spines. However, if they really succeeded, the current situation in the void would not be one where order and non-order would be opposing each other. They were probably overthinking things. "I'm not sure about this either." The little girl shook her head. She saw that the two of them were so solemn that they almost became transparent and knew what they were thinking. But don't worry, the core of the primordial realm did not fall into their hands. Otherwise, they would not have been entrenched here for so long. When I came to this world, I saw those things entrenched in the whole world not long after I observed for a while. They caught me while I was at it. The isolation circle that you cast drove them to the other side, which could be considered as protecting this world from being destroyed. Otherwise, this last clue would have been lost, and then we would have no idea where to find the core of the primordial realm. Hui scratched his cheek and suddenly said, "But even if it had been here before, we don't know where it went now. I don't think it will stay here. At least, it's a clue." The two of them followed the little girl's guidance and came to the front of the smallest star cluster. However, its body was not small at all. The starry sky in front of them was so bright and dazzling that Hui could not help but squint his eyes. More than 10 trillion stars gathered here, which was about 1/10 of the starry sky. Compared to its other 3 siblings, it was indeed small. However, if this thing was placed in another starry sky, it would already be an abnormal behemoth. It did not look like a regular circle, but more like a sea urchin, motionless here. Hui accelerated his vision by 100 million times, but did not see any signs of rotation. The other 3 larger star clusters were the same. They quietly nested in their nests, silent with the starry sky, no longer moving. Hui suddenly thought of a question. "Wait a minute, I just observed the state of this world. This is a very young world. Are you sure it's really the first batch of world born in the 8 elements realm? It can't be wrong. As for why it looks so young," the little girl lowered her head and thought of a simple explanation. "It's like the difference between stagnant water and living water, or like the metabolism of life. The world of the source is exchanging energy on a large scale with the void every moment. Because this process is too fast, you can't judge the true appearance of this world, and naturally, there is no way to identify its time. In other words, this is a completely open world." Hui rolled his eyes a few times and suddenly muttered, "No wonder it can withstand the influence of the void turbulence." "So this is it what? How is this related to the void turbulence?" Yin Nuashing suddenly didn't understand. Probably because he hadn't recovered and his brain wasn't working well. He felt that he should know, but he just didn't want to use his brain now. Seeing his confused and sleepy face, Hui also roughly understood why he didn't understand. So he explained, "Water dissolves in water." "Oh, this is nonsense, but this is what it means. Its completely open world allows it to become a part of the void when it relies on it. When it floats in the land of nothingness, it will become a part of the void. Therefore, you can see this world as a part of the void itself, or as a part of the land of nothingness. This is not fixed. Even if the void trembles countless times and cleans up all the things attached to the void, leaving only the state of nothingness, they will still merge with the void and nothing will happen. The realm of the gods can also exist in the void, but the realm of the gods relies on its own powerful world origin to withstand everything, while the source world will merge with the void to avoid the cleansing." Yin Nuashing said, "So according to this, the source world will not perish. According to the movement of the void, after 51 eras, most of them have floated into the chaotic void, and only a few are still wandering in the middle and lower planes, or even the upper planes. Theoretically, that's the case. That's why these source worlds still retain a considerable amount of information about the birth of the primordial realm. Well, it's one thing that they won't perish, but they can also be destroyed. Looking at the strength of this world, any beginner heavenly god would be able to destroy it, Hui said helplessly as he raised his finger. Yin Nuoxing was speechless. This was just like how the celestial gods with eternal time could still be killed by others. By the same logic, eternal life did not mean that one could not be killed. While the little girl was observing the cluster of stars, Yin Nuoxing and Hui were also using their own methods to examine and observe the source world. The little girl was right. Even if the source world was placed in front of them, they might not be able to recognize it. At most, they would treat it as a slightly special and abnormal world and would not think in this direction. To them, the source world was actually a legendary existence. No one had seen it before, or even if they saw it, they would not be able to recognize it. Now that they had finally seen it, they naturally had to observe it carefully. Some of the information about the source world was indeed very well preserved, and in the bottom layer of the rules, they could touch some useless and messy information that they could not normally come into contact with. They were both source worlds, but the amount of information they contained was different. Hui had already mentally prepared himself. He wanted to find some of the original power of the primordial realm at the beginning, but it seemed to have been metabolized by itself. The source world in front of them was no different from the source worlds that were born at this time. Its aura, rules, and energy all originated from the void at this moment. After all, it was completely open, so it knew very well how to keep up with the trends. Yin Nuoxing tilted her head and glanced at Hui, then looked at the little girl. She saw that her eyes were shining, and there was a huge amount of energy and information flowing in her eyes. She estimated the time and felt that it would take a while, so she suddenly lifted her foot and flew towards the cluster of stars in front of them. "Phone? What are you doing?" "Looking for something. You just stay there, it's nothing." Yin Nuoxing responded. He responded and plunged into the extremely bright cluster of light in front of him. The scene in front of him was like a layer of transparent barrier that was full of light enveloping the things inside, and that layer of light barrier was formed by the energy overflowing from a cluster of stars. It was a combination of a huge amount of light and energy, and the concentration was very high. When Yin Nuoxing passed through it, she felt her body tremble slightly, and at that moment, she felt as if she had plunged into the sea. But these substances are not gaseous. They're really just the condensation of light and energy. It was probably similar to the heliosphere of a star system, but the strength of the dividing line in front of him was much stronger than the former. He felt for a while in the hundreds of millions of light, accurately found the center of the cluster of stars, and flew towards the place where the light was the brightest and most dazzling. That was the habitat of countless stars, and even the gods who liked to sunbathe would not like to stay there. It was a place where it was daytime all year round, and basking in the sun that would only turn oneself into a piece of charcoal. After circling a few times in the center of the cluster of stars, Yin Nuoxing did not rush to the most dazzling place in the center. The flow of energy there was a little abnormal, and all of it was downwards, the bottom of the void, or even lower places. It would not affect him, but if he suddenly rushed over there, it might have some negative effects on the cluster of stars. After all, his weight was too big, and the outflow of energy was a little small. He was afraid that he would get stuck there and suffocate the cluster of stars. After circling a few times and finding a suitable place, Yin Nuoxing stretched out his hand and grabbed the space in front of him. He then twisted it, and the endless energy floating there suddenly quickly gathered in front of his fist. The scene in front of him suddenly turned into a bright picture of hundreds of millions of stars surging. If he switched his vision, he could see that the energy was floating out from the countless stars that lived here. From the brightest place, a galaxy gushed out and finally gathered in one place. With Yin Nuoxing's movement, it condensed into a transparent glass ball the size of a thumb. Inside the glass ball was a vast starry sky, with hundreds of millions of stars shining brightly. Yin Nuashing pinched the glass ball in front of his eyes and let it randomly aim at a big star. Through the light of the big star, he looked at the shrunken galaxy that was indeed very real. He muttered to himself, "The quality is not bad, as expected of the source world. Unfortunately, I can't use this thing. Otherwise, I can add another bargaining chip." After using the same method to condense 6 more similar glass balls, Yin Nuashing hesitated for a moment, and then condensed the 8th glass ball again. However, the 8th glass ball was obviously twice as small as the previous one. The galaxy inside also became very blurry, and the sparse starlight could not gather into a galaxy. "It's the limit. Forget it." Yin Nuashing sighed. He waved his hand and let the 8th glass ball dissipate into the original energy and return to the starry sky. He kept the 6 glass balls and carried one back to Huey's side. "Oh, you're back. Where did you go?" The sudden appearance of Yin Nuashing shocked Hui. He had just said a sentence when a bead flew towards him. He was stunned and subconsciously caught it. "What is this?" "This is something condensed from the source world. It condenses everything that should and should not exist. If I'm not wrong, there should be a part of the energy from the beginning of the primordial realm in it." Yin Nuashing tilted her head and said casually, "The name? I'm too lazy to think about it. Anyway, it's something good. I think it's about time for you. This thing can theoretically allow you to step into the primordial realm more quickly and stably." Hui suddenly became excited when he heard this. "Then it's useless to me. Not to mention that the divinity carrier exploded. That part of the aftereffects is still there. This thing is useless to me." Yin Nuashing slowly crossed her arms. "Don't worry about me. You go up first. I'll think of a way after a while." Huey's excited expression was suddenly splashed with a bucket of cold water. He looked at the glass ball in his hand in distress. His face was conflicted and hesitant. He held it in his hand and could not help but say, "Actually, I'm not in a hurry. You see, I can handle it now." Yin Nuashing's expression suddenly became a little terrifying. She said each word coldly. "Here, me, go up." Hui trembled. He shrunk his neck and said weakly, "Oh, I know." Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes, and her expression returned to normal. She saw Huey's gloomy face and could not help but frown. She let out a long sigh. "Why are you still conflicted at a time like this? Don't tell me you think I can't stand the stimulation and don't want to break through? Do you think I'm that kind of person?" This was a suicidal question. Once this question was raised, Lai Hui knew that he might be dead. No matter how he answered, he would not be able to escape a fat beating. He thought for a while with a face full of sweat. His face showed that he was unafraid of death. He said calmly, "That's not it. Anyway, you can tear apart the origin realm now. The matter of breaking through is actually, well, it's still meaningful for you. I just meant that. Didn't I agree to go up with you at the beginning? Now you suddenly ran away." Yin Nuashing's cheeks trembled. She stretched out her hand and slapped Huey's back hard. Okay, I'll keep my promise, Lord Guardian. But now is not the time to make promises. It's good for the situation and the God's world to have a yuanshi earlier. As for me, Yin Nuashing crossed her arms and laughed easily. Even if I wait 100 or 80 years and wait 1,000 years for you to reach the yuanshi realm and the whole timeline, you're only one thread ahead of me. There's nothing to be calculative about. Okay, you're right. Hui breathed a sigh of relief. He looked down at the glass bead in his hand and nodded seriously. "I'll reach the yuanshi realm as soon as possible." Yin Nuashing nodded. When she was about to go to the star cluster next to her to take a look, the little girl suddenly said, "Ahem, you're finally done. You're so affectionate that I can't interrupt." Yin Nuashing and Hui turned their heads at the same time. Yin Nuashing said, "How was it? Did you see anything?" The little girl fiddled with her long, grayish-blue hair. Her small body swayed as if she was thinking about something. After a while, she nodded. "I saw something." Yin Nuashing and Hui were just a little excited when they heard the little girl say seriously, "But it's not good news." The two of them rolled their eyes at the same time. Here it comes. It's just a routine operation. Nothing good ever happens when something happens. If it's not bad news, it's worse news, and then it's even worse news. Say it. Yin Nuoxing rubbed her pretty face and forced herself to look calm. Say it, I'm ready. The little girl nodded and took a deep breath. The core of the 8 elemental realms, yes. The two nodded and listened attentively. It has indeed been here. There's no problem with the trace. Yes, yes, but it seems to have fallen into the elemental realm below. Yin Nuo and Yun Xing were stunned, their faces full of astonishment. Huh. Chapter 1478. Fell down. Yin Nuoxing and Hui were both shocked, with a dumbfounded look on their faces. Falling down is the kind of falling down that we understand. The core of the 8 primordial realms went to the lower primordial realm. The little girl nodded with a wry smile. Judging from the traces, it's been more than 20 eras since this happened. It's even earlier than the last void upheaval. It's much, much earlier. Hui was still in shock. Yin Nuoxing tilted his head and looked at the position of the few star clusters. The huge vortex, the void, and everything known in this world were swallowed into the vortex. The edge of the vortex was still the space of the present world and the world of order. The deeper they explored, the world they knew would collapse bit by bit until they reached the bottom. Everything they knew in the present world would fall apart and fall apart. The above was the situation observed from the perspective of God. However, from the perspective of Yin Nuoxing and the others, the huge vortex of the primordial realm dragged everything in the world to the bottom of the vortex. The commonly known time, space, void, nothingness, and other things became chaotic there. The boundaries became blurred, and everything seemed to be mixed together like a pot of boiling hot pot. Since some boundaries became blurred and mixed up at that place, when a certain amount of energy gathered at that place, it was indeed possible to penetrate the barrier of the primordial realm and open a passage to the lower primordial realm in a short time. Then, the energy accumulated there would pour down like a flood and rush to the other primordial realms. There was a high probability that it would directly rush to the 7 primordial realms. However, it was hard to guarantee that the chaotic state would not penetrate and directly fall to the first primordial realm. After all, on the entire map of the primordial realm, the first primordial realm to the 8th primordial realm were connected. The 8th primordial realm did not necessarily have to go to the 7th primordial realm first to the 6th primordial realm. It was just closer to the 7th primordial realm. Changing the path to the 6th primordial realm could also lead directly to the 6th primordial realm. Just like the fragment that ran into the void and lost at that time, that fragment also abducted the void creature, Jikoin. Do we really have to entangle with the other primordial realms? Yin Nuoxing rubbed her forehead with a headache. Running to the other primordial realms was a situation that she had always been wary of. It was just that the probability of this happening was relatively small, and it would probably take some time. She did not expect that she would have to make contact with the lower realm now. From the looks of it, it was very likely that the underworld would go to the lower realm. Even if they didn't go for the cores of the 8 primordial realms, they might go for the cores of the other primordial realms. No matter what the case was, as long as they succeeded, they wouldn't have a good ending. Yin Nuoxing reached out and twirled a strand of hair hanging in front of her. Looks like our team's defense of the lower primordial realm has to start in advance, but there's still a problem. Do we run down there? Let's not talk about the fact that the primordial realms have little contact with each other. If such a large-scale operation were to run into other realms, it would be good enough if they didn't treat us as invaders and set up cannons to blast us. The primordial heavenly god's protection was opened by us, and the suppressive power is still very strong. Those from the upper realm will be greatly suppressed when they go to the lower realm. Even the primordial heavenly god won't be able to break free just like that. Our only advantage is that our own laws are stronger than those from the lower realm, and the power of the laws that we control is also stronger than those from the lower realm. That's all. That's enough. We imitated him and replied while snapping his fingers. The strength of the laws and the power of the laws is enough for us to crush the lower realm. But we can't sweep away thousands of troops like we did here. It's not a problem to stand alone in an undefeatable realm, but it's hard to say if we're beaten up by a group. As for the method, if it doesn't work, then we'll just beat them until they're obedient. This has happened a lot in the realm of the gods. Anyway, we're not going there to be peace messengers. If they're obedient and willing to listen to us, then it's naturally the best. If they're disobedient and want to cause trouble, we have the bigger fist so we can beat them up. Although we're guarding against the underworld and not letting them get their hands on the core of the primordial realm, that's their own world. Why should we be kind enough to remind them and warn them? If they don't want to listen, then so be it. He crossed his arms and said disdainfully, I don't believe that the core of the lower primordial realm will have any earth-shattering effect on the 8th realm. Yin Nuashing and the little girl were shocked. Yin Nuashing's tone was unusually surprised. You've never said something like that before. With this guy's hopelessly good-natured personality, he could actually say something like that. The sun must have risen from the west. Wait a minute, this can't be. It's all because of you. We spread his hands and threw the blame on Yin Nuashing. Yin Nuashing, they talked about the lower realm for a while. Whether they were going to implement it now or not, they really needed to start planning for the lower realm from now on. They didn't want to wait until they found out that something had happened to the lower realm before they were too busy. By then, they would have reached the point where distant water couldn't put out a nearby fire. The destruction of the lower realm would be a matter of minutes. The lower realm, the lower the understanding of the concept of the void, the planes, and the world. It's really not easy to let them know that there are enemies who have the power to cross worlds. It's probably fine for the 5th, 6th, and 7th realms. The strength of the void decreases with the lower realm of the primordial realm, so they can also fight in the void. But for the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th realms, it's really hard to say. The life there is so weak that it makes one's hair stand on end. I suspect that just throwing a mortal tear from the Pantheon realm can wipe out an entire city. Hui waved his hand, his words containing a hint of worry. It's not that exaggerated, but forget it. It's more or less the same anyway. Yin Nuashing looked at him speechlessly and let out a long sigh. Hui grinned and looked at the little girl who had been deep in thought since the beginning. I say, little girl, although we talked about this problem last time, I still can't help but want to ask again. Why is such an important thing running around casually, and you, the Guardian, don't know about it all? And now it has even jumped down to the lower realm. At the mention of this question, the little girl's face began to sweat at a visible speed. She glanced to the side guiltily and couldn't say a word for a long time. She quickly changed the topic. Let's go to another star cluster to have a look. The last trace spread to that location. Before Yin Nuashing and Hui could react, she flew away, leaving the two of them looking at each other. They stayed where they were for a while, thought for a while, and felt that there was nothing they could do, so they followed her. The little girl went to the largest star cluster in the sky. This star cluster had 2 huge central points, and the light gathered there was more than 10,000 times brighter than the smallest star cluster they had just been to. It was densely packed with huge stars, burning happily, dazzlingly bright, and exploding happily. A real sun had exploded. Yin Nuashing and the others went through a short-distance teleportation. As soon as they came out of the teleportation, they saw a grand burst of light in the corner of their eyes. The roaring energy explosion brought a grand energy shockwave that was enough to affect an area of thousands of light years. But that would take some time. At this moment, it was right in front of them, and a colorful and nutritious gale blew up in the sky, causing Yin Nuashing and the others' faces to tremble a few times. A second later, 2 dazzling energy streams appeared in the sky, streaking across the galaxy at the speed of light, and rushed to the other side of the sky along with the shockwave. This bit of light was enough to illuminate the other side of the sky. Yin Nuashing rubbed his eyes and raised his eyebrows slightly, indicating that he was in a good mood. He clapped silently. Wonderful, wonderful. The fireworks in the sky are indeed the most dazzling thing in the void. Every time I see it, it makes me happy for a long time. Well, the price to pay to make you happy is really high. You have to blow up the stars to make you happy. We looked at him speechlessly as he watched the energy stream gradually moving away at the speed of light. I'm thinking that the energy explosion you created yourself is not smaller than this. Purer, more beautiful. The meaning is different. Yin Nuashing glanced at him and said, carrying Yin Nuashing, who still wanted to stand and watch the fireworks, he walked towards the center of the star cluster. We briefly analyzed the appearance of this abnormal star cluster. There were two large cores, and the area between the cores was hovering with many dazzling celestial bodies. They were like white lines connecting the two cores together, forming a huge white space crack. He looked between the two cores for a while, found the position of the little girl, and flew towards one of the cores with Yin Nuashing. How is it? Did you find any useful information? Which primordial realm did the core of the primordial realm fall to? When Hui and Yin Nuashing came to the little girl's side, she was waving her two little hands with a serious expression. As for what she was doing, they were not sure. They just had to wait for now. No one knew the core of the primordial realm better than her, just like no one knew the realm of the gods better than the two of them. The tracing information has spread to the other 7 primordial realms, but it has been too long, so long that even the source world can't keep this information. It's very difficult to find traces of it. Even if we find it, we can only confirm the information when the core of the primordial realm fell into the other primordial realms. In fact, it might be very far from where it is now, the little girl said in a low voice. I know, I've been mentally prepared for this, but we only have this one clue now. What else can we do if we don't look for it? Are we going to wait for the underworld to chase after the core of the primordial realm and then come back to destroy us? Hui shrugged helplessly and shook his head. With the nature of those people, they probably regard the core of the primordial realm as their first goal. They still have a second goal, the world of order. And from the looks of it, whether the first goal is achieved or not, it won't affect their second goal. The little girl frowned and sighed as she thought of something. She scratched her eyebrows helplessly. Those things, I'll try my best to find it. I'm more anxious than you guys. They sat and waited like that for 3 to 4 days. During this time, the abyssal death shroud was quiet. The abyssal death shroud that gathered in this world did not move, and the abyssal death shroud that gathered in the void was also quiet, as if they had given up on this goal. However, Yin Nuashing felt that it was most likely the people behind the scenes who were thinking, plotting, and measuring something. A few days ago, when he faced the abyssal giant, he clearly felt a clear consciousness from its body and from its eyes, as if someone was spying on the world of order through that huge body. However, this feeling soon dissipated as the abyssal giant dissipated. He did not think that those people from the underworld would be able to endure so thoroughly when they had such great power. They were most likely up to something. For example, those tattered things they saw that day, or maybe they were still trying to breed a normal life form from the abyssal death shroud, and there were many more. He was not those people from the underworld, and there was no way he could guess what they were up to. The little girl sat there with her legs crossed and seriously looked for clues about the core of the primordial realm. Her power flowed continuously along the starry sky to a core of the star cluster in front of her. It seemed to have fallen to the bottom along with the huge vortex, falling into the other primordial realms. After all, when the energy flowed to a boundary, it completely lost its connection. It might have crossed over to another primordial realm. Yin Nuashing also tried to use the origin energy or the energy of order to search for it. However, no matter how much consciousness he injected into the energy, when it crossed the boundary, the energy, without exception, lost all contact. It disappeared more completely than falling into a black hole. This is not a stable passage to the primordial realms. Although you may occasionally travel between the primordial realms, you should not be aware of this. The little girl glanced at him and explained in a low voice, crossing over to the primordial realms barrier will result in an exchange of information and energy. Your energy will be affected just like that. If it was in a normal passage to the primordial realm, there would not be too much of a problem. It would just cut off part of the connection. However, this passage is mixed with too many things and is no longer pure. Things that pass through here to the other primordial realms will be clean once. Oh, I know about this. Yin Nuashing nodded. However, I have never tried to stay in 8 primordial realms and throw energy into the 7 primordial realms. Naturally, I have never tried this unstable passage to the primordial realms. With the help of the little girl's energy, Yin Nuashing was able to observe the situation together with her. He could barely catch a glimpse of the general appearance of the great primordial realm. It sounded very impressive, but the void was boundless. The great primordial realm. Therefore, he only said that it was a general appearance. In 4.5 days, she spread her energy through the primordial realm's barrier to the various primordial realms. Bit by bit, she probed into the other primordial realms. While maintaining concealment, she carefully searched for information about the primordial realm's core in the entire primordial realm. As she spread her energy deeper and deeper, the difficulty would only increase exponentially. The consumption of energy and mind would increase exponentially. In the end, it would reach a very shocking level. It feels even more boring than the void. Yin Nuashing gave a long yawn. Observing the great primordial realm from such a perspective was even more boring than staring at the dark void. Although there was something in her eyes, the flowing purple colors were too dazzling. Over time, her eyes were about to turn purple. We also felt rather bored. He got up and flew towards the core. Yin Nuashing glanced at him and also stood up and floated over. The two stood side by side at the core of the star cluster. In the brightest area in front of them, there was a huge object. It was so huge that it could distort time, space, and the void. At this moment, it was still lying there quietly, pretending to be harmless. We took a few steps towards the inner part of the star cluster. He crossed layer after layer of thick light before finally coming to a stop. As they crossed the area covered by the light, he could see the huge object with just his eyes. He thought it would be a black sphere, a sphere shrouded in countless rays of light, but in fact, it was really a vortex. Yin Nuashing saw his astonishment. After all, it's the source world. It's normal for it to be abnormal. We have never seen the source world before. Other worlds also don't have such a scene. Yin Nuashing poked her head out. A huge, three-dimensional vortex appeared in front of her. The huge gravitational force and energy waves pulled the billions of stars gathered in the center to move. The edge of the vortex was like a small galaxy, rotating very slowly. Just those areas alone showed very obvious signs of distortion. We took a few more steps forward and stood at the edge of the huge vortex. He stretched out his hand as if he was standing under the eaves and looking at the sky covered by dark clouds. He could not help but stretch out his hand to see if it was raining. Once you cross this boundary, there will be changes. Try it. Hui held Yin Nuashing's hand and stretched it out without saying a word. Everything is blurred and mixed up from this boundary. The deeper you go, the more serious the confusion will be. Yin Nuashing rubbed her fingers. She could feel a weak pull from her arm that crossed the boundary. Let's go and see. Hui smiled and pointed to the top of the vortex. He took a step forward and the order barrier opened silently. Yin Nuashing looked at him indifferently and followed him in. The two walked to the core of the star cluster, the top of the vortex. From here, they could see the situation inside the vortex clearly. It was like looking at a huge ocean vortex, and they could clearly see the bottom of the sea. The place just now is the boundary. From a boundary to where we are, it's a shallow area. We thought of something and began to divide the vortex area. Then, after crossing this step, we will go to the deeper area. Maple, I feel that the situation inside the vortex is similar to the chaos void. Yin Nuashing squinted until he suddenly said this. She could not help but be stunned. Similar to the chaos void? What do you mean by similar? They are similar. The inside of this vortex is like the chaos void. Everything has been born, but nothing is born, and it maintains the state of chaos. Yin Nuashing pursed her lips. The chaos void was a place very far away from the order void. It was roughly divided into two areas. One was the upper, middle, and lower planes with life and order, the order void. The other was the equally vast and infinite chaos void. Outside the order void, the void, there was a formed void. It was purer and more dangerous than the void in the order world. It was roughly equivalent to the birth of the void at the beginning of the world. Yin Nuashing reacted. Probably because of this, the source world is very similar to the chaos void. After crossing the boundary in front of them, they could still continue to move forward. The two of them were at the peak of the source world and would not be in any danger. However, they were now at the edge. If they took another step forward, they might be accidentally pulled down and then be swept away by the vortex to an unknown place. In the end, they would be spat out from the remote void of the lower elemental realm like garbage. For the time being, it has fixed its own time so that it will not be separated. Hui bent down and looked at the bottom of the vortex. He turned his head and looked at Yin Nuashing. How about we go and have a look? The timing is not good. Forget it. Yin Nuashing shook her head. In the current confrontation between the order world and the underworld, the two of them were almost the most powerful forces in the order world. If they left like this, perhaps the death mist of the abyss would immediately confiscate their belongings. Hui shrugged. He had also thought of this problem. He had to give up on the suggestion. He wanted to try the feeling of plunging into this big vortex. Wait a minute. I'll leave something behind. It might be useful. Hui suddenly took out a scepter token from his pocket. With a shake of his hand, the scepter broke away from their order barrier. The token disappeared without even a sound. Yin Nuashing observed for a while and did not find anything wrong. What did you do? I threw a token that is closely related to myself into it. Hui said with a smile. His expression suddenly changed. The feedback came back. That token, it fell into another primordial realm. Let me see. Order and rules have locked. This place is the third primordial realm. Yin Nuashing slapped his face. Are we going to go to the third primordial realm? No, that's not necessarily the case. It was not Hui who answered him. It was the voice of the little girl. The two of them turned their heads at the same time. They saw her looking depressed and helpless. She sighed and shook her head as she walked to their side. This time, she did not wait for them to speak and did not intend to keep them in suspense. She said directly, the whole great primordial realm has the aura of the eighth primordial realm's core. It is not caused by the shadow's information. It has run all over the great primordial realm. Yin Nuashing and Yin Nuashing. Is this a joke? Can't there be good news all day long? It would be good to give an accurate primordial realm. Although it is so difficult to find an entire primordial realm, it is not an impossible task. Look at this. What kind of situation is it to be floating all over the great primordial realm? The location of the mission was unknown. It covered the whole great primordial realm, 8 endless voids and countless worlds. They had not even seen that thing directly. If this mission was placed on anyone's head, they would go crazy. Even Yin Nuashing and Yin Nuashing felt their hearts ache. But they still had to bite the bullet and think about it. Then the problem was there were traces of the 8th primordial realm's core in all 8 primordial realms. How should they find it? Chapter 1479. There are all sorts of trivial matters in the void, big and small matters that could be dealt with as much as they wanted. Small matters such as losing face or losing a few Tom, Dick, and Harry. Big matters such as what was happening now. When the void was in chaos, it still had to hit him on the head with a heavy hammer. Why was that? Yin Nuashing expressed that he did not know. He was also looking for a reason now. What he knew was that if this continued, he would be exhausted to death before the void was destroyed. Yin Nuashing and Hui stood in the starry sky, their faces as dark as a blizzard. The little girl in front of them was still carefully and nervously searching for the whereabouts of the core of the 8 elements realm. It had been 2 hours since the shocking report just now. In short, nothing good had happened in these 2 hours. They continued to search and followed one of the clues from the 8 elements realm to the 3rd element's realm, and then back to the 8 elements realm. The little girl herself was confused. They didn't know how active the core of the 8 elements realm was, but judging from how it was still alive and kicking in the Yuan realm, they could probably imagine that it had the temperament of a naughty child. Then, logically speaking, since the situation had already become like this, there was nothing to be confused about. Yun Nuoxing observed for a while and planned to clean up the abyss death mist in this world. At the same time, he also planned to move this precious source world to his doorstep to study it. Just as he was about to take action, the little girl suddenly spoke. "I can't find anything. Looks like I'll have to go down and take a look myself." Yin Nuoxing and Hui turned their heads in unison and stared at her as if she was an idiot. After being stared back by her resolute eyes for a while, the two of them adjusted their comical expressions, pondered for a moment, and then sighed. It was not that they could not understand. After all, she was the guardian of the altar and had been looking after the core of the primordial realm, just like them. Sometimes, Yin Nuoxing felt that the 3 of them standing here were really very similar. They all had things that they needed to protect with their lives, even though sometimes the things they were protecting did not need to be protected at all. Yin Nuoxing was lamenting when Hui suddenly said, "You won't run into the abyss death mist again and be trapped there for tens of thousands of years, right? This time, no one will come to save you. We basically have no way to know what happened in the lower realm." The little girl's expression stiffened. She was stunned for a while, and then gave a thumbs up and smiled. "There won't be a problem. This is just an accident." After saying that, her expression stiffened again. She turned her head a little guiltily. "Probably." Yin Nuoxing. Personally, I don't recommend you to run around at this time. Judging from some signs, the abyss death mist can obviously distinguish your breath. This time, we just ran a few steps faster and arrived before the people of the underworld found you. Next time, it may be them who appear in front of you first. Of course, I know you have your own responsibilities, so I don't plan on interfering or poking my nose into other people's business. Yin Nuoxing sighed deeply. He took out a black glass orb from his pendant and gently placed it in the little girl's hand. "It contains the power I forcefully raised to the primordial realm. Right now, it can only be used 3 times. After using it, it will probably take some time to recover. Every time I use it, I will be able to sense where you are. It's the power of chaos. Be careful when you use it. Don't get yourself sucked in." The little girl used 2 fingers to pinch the glass orb and studied it. "It's condensed from the power of divine destruction. Your power of divine destruction is not of the order attribute." "That's right." Yin Nuoxing nodded. The element of destruction was not of the order attribute. In the past, when he was a god, he could not see through so many things with his level of cultivation. He only knew that it was an extremely powerful power. Things like order and non-order were more complicated things that could only be understood at the origin realm. It was already very rare to be able to sense the difference between the 2 types of power at other realms. As for the power of divine destruction, the enemy we encountered earlier possessed 2 types. Yin Nuoxing suddenly thought of something. He felt like she should be able to answer him. "What is this power of divine destruction? It shouldn't have been born naturally from the void, right?" The little girl scratched her head. "Theoretically, it does have something to do with the void itself, but I'm not too sure about the specifics. After all, even though I have the power of divine destruction, I didn't have it at first." We suddenly squinted his eyes. "In the beginning? How long has it been since your consciousness appeared?" The little girl lowered her head and rubbed her chin in thought. After quite a while, she raised her head and answered, "Around a dozen epochs ago, around the time of that upheaval." She gritted her teeth uncertainly and said, "It was probably after the upheaval. After that, I suddenly woke up one day and found that I had an inexplicable power of unknown origin in my body. It was attached to the altar, and I obtained it." This perfect timing made Yin Nuoxing's heart feel like it was hit hard by a wooden hammer. He sweated and could not help but gulp. Before and after the upheaval, the power of divine destruction. Damn it, The God here can't be referring to the heavenly God of origin and the others, right? As soon as he said this, all kinds of thoughts burst out from his mind like a volcanic eruption. Huey's dead fish eyes also bulged out. This was a very possible situation. The underworld was a group of people who survived before the upheaval of the void, and that group of people must know a lot more than him and Maple. Maybe they knew the ins and outs of this so-called power of divine destruction, so they named it that way. Then, analyzing the name, was divine destruction a power that emerged after the collective fall of the heavenly gods of origin? After the fall of the heavenly gods of origin, there were some unknown changes in the void and the primordial realm. Yin Nuashing remembered that the little girl had said something like that at the time, and suddenly felt that his guess was very possible. But then he asked, "But why did I obtain this power? You're asking me about this, but who am I supposed to ask? My brain isn't as good as yours." Hui could not help but smile bitterly when he saw that Feng was staring at him with wide eyes. The fall of the heavenly gods of origin, the upheaval of the void, and all things in the world changed. If it is as you guessed, and the power of divine destruction appeared after the fall of the heavenly gods of origin, then there is an 80% chance that some obscure changes occurred in the void, and this change eventually involved you, who is in the realm of the gods. But there is one thing that I find very strange. From this point of view, the power of divine destruction must have an inseparable relationship with the heavenly gods of origin. A connection of order, a connection of cause and effect, or a connection of laws. But the power of divine destruction and the origin energy are two completely different things. The order, aura, and so on in the power are completely different. Yin Nuashing explained, it only appeared because of their fall, and is not directly related to them. It was not born from them. So the origin energy and the power of divine destruction are different things. Otherwise, I would have known about it long ago. I have two types of power, and if they had something in common, I would have been the first to discover it. But before that, there was no connection in this regard at all. It has something to do with the void, or the heavenly gods of origin, and so on. Yin Nuashing's eyes twinkled as he spoke. A change born from the void? In the ancient age, he had encountered the primal chaos element and used it to step into the realm of heavenly gods. That was under the circumstances of the realm of 5 elements. In other words, the void or that world gave birth to the power of divine destruction on its own. I once encountered my power of divine destruction in a world. It was like the primal energy that floated in the starry sky without a master. I was thinking, could it be that it is not simply an inherited power or a power of some loophole, but, I can't say for sure. The little girl heard him and said, as I said before, the void itself changed greatly after the fall of the heavenly gods of origin. They were not simply the guardians of order. Their existence itself was related to the void. They were like a part of order. Their fall had a great impact on the void and the world of order, and thus caused some loopholes to appear in this world. The power of divine destruction is one of the loopholes? Yin Nuashing narrowed his eyes and asked, "It is probably the most intuitive one. From what you said about them being born out of thin air in a place, I can infer something. They're not just a pure power, and they do not simply belong to anyone. They may have become a kind of energy that can only be born under certain harsh conditions." The little girl nodded and said, "If you had not mentioned this earlier, I would not have thought in this direction. It seems that I have underestimated the changes in the void." Well, he had already said that the void had a lot of troublesome matters. Before the first wave had subsided, another wave arose. Moreover, it was a series of ups and downs. He had already said that the void was definitely looking for people to be buried with it. Before it was destroyed, it would exhaust a group of people to death first. Void probably had its Sundara attribute. Perhaps it heard Yin Nuashing's nagging and was a little unhappy at this moment. Then it moved slightly. "Lord Feng, Lord Hui, the abyssal death mist is rioting on a large scale. They're gathering their power and are about to come into direct contact with the void sealing circle." At the same time, the words in their minds made Yin Nuashing and Hui jumped dozens of meters high. The little girl was thinking about something with her head down. When she looked up, she found that the two of them were gone. After a while, she came down from above. She was stunned. What happened? No, nothing. Just a little pain in the ass. Yin Nuashing's face was ashen. Tiredness and sleepiness were all over his face. He just wanted to rush into the underworld and blow those bastards into pieces that could not be put back together. But that was just a thought. If he really rushed over, he did not know how many pieces he would be torn into. Speaking of which, that extremely urgent report just now sounded very familiar. It seemed that it was the one who had said the emergency report a while ago. Was this guy a mobile disaster warning system? We didn't even have time to respond. He quickly ordered his men to get into formation through soul transmission. Looking at their current position, he clenched his teeth and said, "Phone, there's no time. We have to go back and guard the front line of the void. This time, they might be serious." What do you mean by serious? They have never played any tricks on us, okay? Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes. Every time they don't tremble, the world of order from top to bottom would start operating rapidly. Then, they would tire themselves out like dogs. Go and do your thing. Be careful. We have things to do here too. Yin Nuashing looked at her and waved his hand to build a huge teleportation magic circle. If you want to go to the lower realm, if you can, find the primordial realm cores of other primordial realms and ensure their safety. Oh, okay. The little girl was a little stunned by his hurried words. She looked at them in a daze as they deployed the teleportation magic circle. After a while, she suddenly jumped up. She finally remembered that she had forgotten something. Wait, you have to find someone to go with me. I can't handle the core of the primordial realm. Only you can handle it. Yin Nuashing, who was about to operate the teleportation magic circle, was stunned. He was seeing stars. What do you mean you can't handle it? Aren't you the guardian of the core of the primordial realm? I'm just an existence that is a fusion of order and concept. Compared to energy life forms like you, I'm more illusory. To put it bluntly, I'm not a life form that actually exists. Even if I can find it in them, I can't bring them back, except for the core of the 8 primordial realms. Yin Nuashing stared. He felt that his eyeballs were going to pop out today. He quickly thought for a while and said, "It's too late. Those bastards from the underworld are at our gates. You have to find a thing first. I have to take this world away." Huh? The little girl was stunned. The 2 people in front of her suddenly disappeared. After a while, behind her, there was a sudden earth-shattering noise in the distant starry sky. After a series of clanging sounds and a powerful impact of order, the death mist of the abyss entrenched in the source world was kicked out. Then, there was another series of strange noises that reverberated in this world for a moment. There was an unknown sound of diarrhea in the conceptual layer of order. After a while, the whole world came to a standstill then. When the little girl came back to her senses, she found herself standing in the void, and the light in front of her had been replaced by a dark background. Fortunately, before they moved the source world away, she had already memorized all the clues and clues. Why did the 2 of them suddenly? She scratched her head in confusion. Suddenly, she felt a huge reaction from the death mist of the abyss behind her. She turned around and immediately understood why the 2 of them left in such a hurry. Those bastards had already come knocking on her door with weapons. There was no time for them to continue wandering. She could feel a huge storm in the world of order, and the void was turbulent under the influence of the storm. The void is really busy. The little girl sighed. She remembered that the last time the void was so lively was before the fall of the heavenly god of origin. The storm that blew at that time was similar to what she saw today. So busy. She sighed again and stood in the void in a daze for a while. Then, she slowly tore open the barrier of the primordial realm with her little hands and slowly walked in. I don't know when we will meet again. What will the void be like then? To put it more exaggeratedly, after this, she did not know if she would have the chance to meet again. Wasn't the void just like that? It repeated the parting of life and death, reunions and reunions, circling and circling, circling and circling. Whether it was chaos or peace, it was just a form of the void. This matter was forced to come to an end for the time being. Whether it was the future or the present, nothing was more important than what was happening in the void now. Those who were busy fighting in the void would not know about this. There was only one thing they were doing and wanted to do from the beginning to the end. They did not have much time or energy to think about the void. It did not take much time to return from the source world to the front lines of the void. But when Yin Nuashing and the others returned to their original positions, the battle had already been going on for some time. It was not the probing attacks like a few days ago, and it was not the situation where there was no fighting spirit and fighting spirit. The abyss of the death mist and the manifestations that appeared in front of them now had an endless desire to destroy. They could feel the crazy will from the outside, even without stepping out of the void blockade. Feng, did you notice? They seemed to have recovered after the little girl was taken away. Hui could still spare a millionth of his attention to chat with Yin Nuashing across the void amidst his busy commanding the battle. Yin Nuashing stood in front of the void blockade and nodded. The abyss of the death mist and the manifestations had finally ended their strange, slumping state. They no longer appeared to be absent-minded and distracted. Now, they were fully unleashing their power as the abyss of the death mist, announcing their power to the entire world of order. This was their true power to flatten a demiplane. Those consciousnesses are coming in handy. Foam, I found them. They are commanding the battle in the abyss of the death mist. If we don't get rid of them, I'm afraid there will be a lot of trouble. The abyssal death mist and the manifestations before him were acting more and more like an elite army that had received elite training. Their fighting spirit was high, and their responses were swift. Although they were filled with an aura of madness from beginning to end, they were able to attack and retreat as they fought. They were no longer charging forward blindly and flattening everything within their sight. The previous manifestations definitely didn't have such orderly properties. It was only possible that the new commander models had come in handy. Right now, the battle had only just begun. When the battle reached its climax and the void turned into a millstone, the elites of the manifestations would probably emerge from a mist. When that happened, the world of order would have to face an army of lunatics in the form of gods descending to the mortal world. It won't affect much. If that's the case, we can only deceive them. Yin Nuashing breathed a sigh of relief. Suddenly, she showed a bitter smile. Hui, let everyone in the divine realm activate their energy towers and enter energy destruction mode. Huh? Do it now? Isn't it the trump card we left behind? Hui was stunned for a moment. He had some doubts in his heart. However, he quickly made the arrangements. The arrangements have been made. But why? The enemy's aura is too strong. Let's cut them down first. Yin Nuashing said calmly. Looking at the scene of countless energy collapsing the void, she could not help but frown. Also, I have a bad feeling. This battle is going to be a real long battle. It went in so quickly. Well, I can't go on stage. I need another strong force to go up. If there's a decline at the beginning of the battle, there's no need to fight later. Yin Nuashing still had the time to laugh at this moment. That's true. How long will it take for you to recover? I don't know. Yin Nuashing sighed deeply and shook her head slowly. The two of them looked at each other through the perspective of their souls. You see my situation just now. It's pretty bad. I haven't recovered yet. Just now I messed up again. I told you not to be so reckless. You didn't listen. We rolled his eyes. A violent tremor came from the void, shaking the huge defensive barrier that they used to face the incoming army. Yin Nuashing turned his attention and looked at the battle between all kinds of strange things and the creatures of order. He frowned slightly and said worriedly, Hui, don't die. Hui was stunned. He had goosebumps all over his body. Hey, I've always been the one saying that to you. Since when did you have the right to say that to me? Hey, don't just laugh. Did you see something? See what? Yin Nuashing shook her head. I didn't see anything. I just felt something. The Longwall realm and the Saint Spirit realm have also been notified. They will bring the reinforcements from the worlds of order to the front line of the void to defend. The The front line has not been completely stabilized yet. However, we don't have time to worry too much. Yin Nuashing said softly. Looking at the battle in front of her, she looked at her hands with some frustration and clenched her fists. We'll do our best and leave the rest to fate. When the worlds of order are in such a terrible state, we can only do our best. Hui looked up silently. Yeah. He also felt that this battle might have started a few days ago. Right now, it had just evolved into the most intense moment. The Wheel of the Void had begun to spin faster again. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.